Enormous flames poured downwards as a strange blaze flickered, washing the originally crimson color in a layer of fire. The fire seemed to burn the space itself, while the ground burnt by the surplus force, it became black as coal. What a terrifying martial animal! Rolo's expression was grim. He could already feel the astonishing undulations contained in the attack. As for the strange fire, it seemed to be an extremely tyrannical power. He did not dare to underestimate the attack at all. A thunderous shout exploded from his mouth. Sixth circle spell, Space Seal. One hand formed a seal as grayish mana erupted, culminating into a spell formula seal of space that was several dozen feet large. Within the seal, a strange star seemed to glow. The moment he used this move, the ground within 1,000 feet radius instantly cracked. The seal shot forward, slamming into the crimson wolf who proudly came to kill. Swoosh! The entire world seemed to shake for an instant. Next, a terrifying shockwave unfurled, blowing away everyone nearby. As the dust settled, everyone cast their gazes over. The ground had been sundered, creating an enormous pit. Skull's gigantic body stopped in midair, and all the martial animals nearby floated without any movement. During the time, Rolo had slid over 100 feet back. His expression was pretty grim. There were deep-to-the-bone wounds on his arm dripping with blood, and the wounds had ice shards in them. It was an attack by Hattie, who didn't stay behind and attacked a moment after Skull. Baron's eyes nearly popped out from their sockets, clearly surprised that Rolo had been injured after a single clash. I do not believe such savage martial animals was acting like a pup earlier. The ground was twisted in a complete mess. Rolo grimly looked towards the wounds on his arm as his eyes twitched slightly. He had not expected the other wolf to be more fierce in attacks. His mana defenses had not put up much of a resistance and were easily torn apart. Salim approached Rolo, shooting a glance at the latter's arm as his pupils shrank slightly. These martial animals are not normal. Rolo nodded. Their bloodline is extremely powerful. The mysterious wolves were ferociously overbearing. He did not dare to hold anything back against it. However, the current situation would very likely not allow him to engage in a one-on-one fight. Rolo coldly said, "If you have nothing else up your sleeves, I will be finding a way to leave on my own. None of us will be able to escape if this continues." The current situation was extremely unfavorable to them. Without mentioning the watching Ezra, Zephyr and gang, just those dozen second-tier martial animals alone were already enough to give them a terrible headache. If this continued, things would go wrong sooner or later. Salim also clearly understood this. He could not help but sigh as his gaze turned towards Ezra. I did not expect the situation to develop in such a manner. Ezra is indeed a problem. No wonder he could revive his fallen kingdom. Rolo gritted his teeth as he said, "Don't worry, if we want to leave, they will not be able to stop us." He slowly walked forwards, both hands suddenly forming a seal as grey vortexes surfaced in his pupils and began to spin wildly. "Come out, Raja Solomon." A giant figure appeared. It wore a loincloth like that of Rolo, a red scarf was wrapped around his head, a strange wavy sword was in its hand, and he had a sleeveless torso attire wore. 8 orbs rotated behind Rolo the grey mana he emitted was beyond the imagination of anyone present. Rolo revealed his martial spirit, the infamous heroic prince of Las Filipinas, Raja Solomon. In an instant, the entire land seemed to fall into an endless darkness. Darkness filled the sky and covered the land. Not only was one's sight obstructed, even one's senses had been weakened to the limit. Ruhar. The second-tier martial animals lost their sense of direction, making them afraid to carelessly attack. They held their positions and took measures to guard themselves as they released low roars. "Keep close, gather together." Ezra's voice spread. Such darkness was difficult to dispel. Attacking alone would undoubtedly give the other side a chance to find an opening. Baron and Argus approached the origin of the voice and kept close to Ezra's side. As for Hattie, its icy eyes swept across the area, before slowly moving backwards. "Truly troublesome," mumbled Rolo in the darkness. He had originally planned on catching them off guard before striking. If the other side was to carelessly attack, he could gather his forces and wipe them out as fast as possible. However, Ezra Zephyr swiftly responded, causing his plan to fail. "Looks like we can only withdraw." He shook his head before flicking his finger. A faint sound was transmitted into the ears of Salem and the rest, causing everyone to immediately fall back. The darkness gradually faded. Baron immediately looked towards the area Rolo and the rest had been at, only to find that it was now empty. Their figures were already at the edge of the horizon, evidently having decided to escape some time ago. "They've fled." The outcome was not to Baron's liking. Ezra also felt rather regretful. It had been an opportunity to bury the upper realm invaders, but their seemingly endless bag of tricks made this task very difficult. The Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom gazed in the direction they had disappeared in as his eyes narrowed slightly, killing intent flashing within. "No hurry, we will have our chance. We'll eventually have to decide the ultimate victor in the Spirit Bailiwick after all." "I know about that man's martial spirit," said Fenrir. This shocked Ezra and he quickly questioned. "Is it a mythical being?" "Yes, an infamous mythical hero, Raja Solomon of Las Filipinas." Due to the darkness, Ezra couldn't clearly see the martial spirit, and neither he could count the orbs rotating behind Rolo If Raja Solomon is here, then, the holder of that martial spirit would also be here," said Fenrir, his voice seeming to contain a worry. "Who are you talking about?" "Raja Indarapatra." "What kind of hero Solomon and Indarapatra were?" the prince asked in curiosity. "Solomon was not much, the real hero was Indarapatra. Wise, bold and seasoned warrior." "Care to explain in detail?" the prince retorted. Fenrir became quiet for a while before he spoke. "In ancient Las Filipinas, at the Llano Lake, there once lived a giant called Umakan. He was so enormous that when he spread his arms sideward, they spread as far as 30 kilometers apart. Almost anything was within easy reach, best of all, men whom he loved to eat. Men flee at the sight of him. No one dared come out to the mountains for fear of losing their lives at the hands of the man-eating giant. In no time, news about Umakan reached as far as the kingdom of Bumbaran and came to the knowledge of its brave princes, Raja Indarapatra and Raja Solomon. They swore to kill the monster. The next day, they both set out to slay the man-eater. However, they didn't leave at the same time. Raja Solomon went ahead and reached Llano to fight. Umakan tricked Solomon into cutting him into several pieces, each piece becoming another giant Umakan. The prince simply proved to be no match for the creature. Sometime later, Raja Indarapatra reached Llano. As soon as he arrived, he was informed by a spirit queen of his brother's fate. Angrily, he swore to avenge his brother's death. Before he went on his way, the spirit queen gifted him with a magic sword to enable him to defeat the giant. Later that same day, the two combatants met near the shores of Llano Lake. When the fight began, Umakan pulled several trees and hurled them at Raja Indarapatra, who was quick to dodge and got out safely. Next, the giant reached for some soft clay and formed big round balls out of it and threw them successively at the prince. Once more, the quick Raja Indarapatra made swift plunges to avoid getting hit by the round clay balls so that some of them fell into the lake while the others landed on the plains and turned into hills and mountains that surround the famous Llano Lake. At any rate, when Raja Indarapatra had his turn, he held up the magic sword that could wound any opponent by merely pointing at him. As he did, Umakan yelled in pain until he fell down to his death. Up to now, in the upper realm, at Las Filipinas Dominion, if one were to visit Llano Lake, one will easily notice small floating islands all around the lake. Some of the islands are big enough to accommodate a number of families, while the others are too small for even a single nipa hut to stand on. These islands were believed to have formed out of the clay balls Umakan threw at Raja Indarapatra that fell into the lake, while the hills and mountains that surround the lake came from those clay balls that landed on the plains and dried over time, as the legend had it. The prince calmly listened to everything and didn't utter anything in response. In the wake of Rolo and the gang's departure, the dozen second-tier martial animals turned around and roared at Ezra Zephyr's group with the intent of chasing them off. Girrrrrrrr. However, Hattie growled at them, its icy growl shaking the forest. After being threatened by Hattie's growl, the second-tier martial animals slowly withdrew. Hattie shook its body as it swiftly began to shrink. In the end, it returned to its usual cerulean cub appearance, cute and remarkable. At the same time, with blazing flames, Skull broke out the space seal spell and came back. He transformed into a crimson cub as well. After the earlier battle, however, everyone clearly knew just how terrifying these cute-looking little fellows were. Hattie and Skull jumped onto Ezra's shoulder, its eyes flickering as he patted them. While they were relaxing, everyone suddenly sensed something and lifted their heads to peer into the sky. The spirity tablet suddenly started shaking. Light converged towards it as ancient words began to appear. Baron uttered in astonishment, "Someone has left their name on the tablet." Ezra and Argus turned their attention over. Only a handful of people had managed to leave their names on the spirity tablet, but now, another name was appearing beneath theirs. Upper Realm, Third Circle Sorcerer, Rima. Battle Accomplishment, Battled Third Circe Sorcerer, Baron Klux, Victory. Argus cast a sympathetic gaze towards Barum. Having his name up there as a negative example was honestly a little humiliating. Baron's complexion was as pale, no emotion visible on his face as he calmly said, "If not for his sudden attack, it would not have been so easy for her to beat me. But wait, she never injured me." However, his hands were tightly clenched, evidently not as cool inside as he appeared on the surface. After all, Baron naturally had his pride as one of the apex-level geniuses of the Naren continent. Moreover, those upper realm invaders were indeed very unscrupulous. Anyone could see that from how they choose to ignore fairness and gang up on everyone. Moments after Rima's name appeared, light began to gather again below it as another name swiftly began to emerge. Third Circle Sorcerer, Baron Klux. Battle Accomplishment, Escaped an Unescapable Encirclement. An expression of shock appeared on Baron's face. He never imagined that his previous escape from them would be acknowledged by the spirity tablet, allowing his name to be engraved upon it. "I've actually gotten my name on the tablet?" Baron beamed as he gazed at the dazzling spirity tablet in the sky, clearly rather surprised by this outcome. Although he had contributed hugely by using Icy Bird martial animal to escape, he knew that the real key person was Ezra Zephyr. But it seems that the spirity tablet had still acknowledged his accomplishment. Ezra Zephyr pondered as he asked, "Your last name is Klux?" The words changed the expression on Baron's face. He said with a grave face, "No, I am just Baron. I would appreciate it if you ignore the last part of my name on the tablet." Ezra stayed quiet after hearing that while Argus was seething as he said, "Does this mean that I can't even compare to you?" Baron chuckled in response, his pretty eyes suddenly rotated, a smile emerging on his face as he looked towards Ezra's shoulders where Skull and Hattie currently were. "Hee hee, good boy, cute cubs. Are you the boss here?" Skull turned his head while Hattie nodded in a rather pleased manner. Baron's eyes brightened. "Which is to say, you've taken possession of the scaled pool?" The two wolf cubs seemed to realize something, their eyes now guarded as they stared at Baron. Ezra's heart shook a little. He could also sense that Skull and Hattie were quite a bit stronger than before. Could it be due to the scaled pool? Adorable Skull. Handsome Hattie. Lend us the scaled pool for a while, okay? Baron's eyes blinked appealingly, and a strange light emitted and gradually fell on the duo cub. Grrrrrrr. The cubs growled in anger. "What?" Baron was confused. "They cancelled the communication link," said Baron. "Their bloodline is extremely pure, you cannot control them," uttered Ezra. Baron looked at the cubs as he pleaded. "Please, lend us for some time." "Petty." Baron glared at it. By the side, Ezra rubbed his chin. He too wanted to have a look at the scaled pool. It had not been easy for them to come here, and he naturally hoped to obtain a share of the blessings. Hattie and Skull were clearly the bosses here, so they needed to convince them somehow. Let them in, Hattie, you saw it, right? There are quite a few of them, and if we want our revenge, we will also have to gather up more teammates while raising our strength. Now look at the scaled pool, it should be pretty beneficial to us if we are allowed to enter for a while. Raising our strength will enable us to fight better? Hattie hesitated upon hearing this. It could feel that Ezra's argument was rather reasonable. The previous clash against Rolo and his group had taught it just how formidable the latter was. After pondering for a few brief moments, Hattie looked at his brother Skull and finally gave in and nodded. Wow, the mighty Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom is the best. Baron immediately cheered upon seeing this. Shut up or I will tell them to not let you in, retorted the prince. Oh no, please no. By the side, Argus Waska was silent for a moment before he said, since His Majesty and Baron have gotten names on the tablet, it would be best if you alone would enjoy the benefits. I am injured and will hinder His Majesty and rest, I should also leave. Baron looked at Ezra, the werewolf prince said without any heed. Yes, you are right. You can wait outside and keep an eye. Don't force me. You wait, what? Argus was bewildered. Argus Waska was shocked when he heard this. Your Majesty. I was just joking, I want to bathe in the pool as well. Then keep quiet and come, uttered Ezra. Everyone is gathering in groups like Salim, Victor, and the rest, and will surely obtain various blessings, raising their strength. If you don't plan on falling behind, I advise you not to give up on this one, advised Baron. Ezra Zephyr was no Samaritan but merely wanted all of his forces to grow strong. After all, Salim had teamed up with the Upper Realm people, forming a rather alarming lineup. Not to mention, their real force has yet to be shown. Every genius brought hundreds of smaller geniuses with him. To match them, Ezra Zephyr would have to strengthen his side of martial masters, all of whom possessed 5th grade martial spirit. Such geniuses were definitely proud individuals, making it an uphill task to convince them. However, they worshipped their prince. Apart from them, he showed kindness and benevolence to attract other useful assets, such as a spearman elf named Baron. Baron was no fool either, and naturally understood Ezra's intentions. Rima may have engaged in underhanded tactics against Baron, but he knew that he was not his opponent. I will repay these debts in the future, said Baron as he looked at Ezra respectfully. The prince waved his hand, before smiling at his 2 cute cubs. I'll be troubling you both to lead the way. Skull jumped and Hattie seemed to sigh as if greatly pained by the act of sharing his beloved things. It powerlessly got up and headed towards the top of the giant mountain. The Ezra's trio hurriedly followed. Martial animals would peer towards them from time to time, but none dared to show themselves due to the sons of Fenrir. In the end, the werewolf prince and gang smoothly reached the mountaintop. The giant mountaintop was akin to the mouth of a volcano, but it was instead filled with strange goldish scaled liquid, making it a pool of scales. Golden light blossomed as a faint, strange fragrance spread. Ezra Zephyr, Baron and Argus Waska gazed at the scaled pool with desire. They could feel the spiritual energy within their bodies grow lively. Is this the scaled pool? The trio drooled, their hearts beating faster as they gazed upon it. Plop, plop. Skull was the first to jump in and Hattie followed after. They idled about on the surface, their eyes slightly shut as if was the best feeling in the world. Ezra Zephyr and the rest watched as strands of golden light from the rippling golden water began to pour into both bodies. The blessing is already before us, how much we gain will depend on ourselves. Ezra grinned at the pool before he also hopped in. Baron's eyes glowed brightly, with no hesitation whatsoever as he leapt in and began happily enjoying the sensation of the pool. Argus's heart rippled for a brief moment and swiftly followed suit. Once Ezra Zephyr was inside, he could feel a peculiar golden light endlessly rush towards him. The golden light poured into his body and was greedily devoured by his squirming flesh and blood. Golden light fused into his blood, making it flow with greater gusto and force. It fused into his muscles, making them stronger and filling them with explosive power. It fused into his bones, making them harder and sturdier. Golden light washed across his body, some of it eventually arriving at his inner core. The black bolts of chaos force within also began to greedily absorb the light, rapidly growing more and more powerful. As he felt his strength grow, Ezra Zephyr fell into a kind of drunken stupor. His eyes were tightly shut as if never intending to wake up ever again. However, the prince ultimately broke out from this state. He unhappily opened his eyes, only to see Skull licking his face. Skull tugged at Ezra Zephyr's clothes with its mouth, before sinking towards the bottom of the scaled pool. The prince was taken aback. Did Skull want him to follow? Was there something at the bottom of the pool? He hesitated for a moment, taking a glance at where Argus and Baron were. The two seemed to be sleeping in the scaled pool, clearly drunk in the changes happening inside their bodies. I'll follow and take a look. Ezra thought for a bit, before decisively diving into the pool. He was rather curious about what exactly had captured the conceited Skull's interest. Inside the scaled pool, Ezra cut through the water, eyes fixed on his guide Skull as he closely followed. As they continued to dive deeper, the prince began to feel a powerful pressure surge towards him from all directions. The magnitude far surpassed that of ordinary water. What a strong pressure. Even though I already have such sturdy body, it's still a bit unbearable. Ezra's expression was grave. The depth of the scaled pool was clearly not a place ordinary people could go to. The black thundering lightning began to flicker out of Ezra's body, dancing around him. However, it was not long before his chaos force barrier already gradually reached its limits. Ezra helplessly came to a stop, revealing an upset look. He had not expected it to be so difficult to reach the bottom of the scaled pool. Skull swiftly swam back upon realizing this. It pondered for a bit before laying itself on Ezra's head. Powerful crimson force spread, enveloping Ezra Zephyr like a bubble. The overwhelming pressure immediately vanished. Thanks. Ezra rubbed Skull's head. The wolf who chased the sun waved its paw and began rapidly descending with Ezra Zephyr once again. My son is remarkable, isn't he? Asked Fenrir. Yes, unlike his father. You arrogant kobold. Shut up, wannabe god. I prohibited you from calling me a god, don't you dare call me that, puny prince. Oh, I ask for forgiveness, I mistakenly insulted gods. For the first time in ages, Fenrir gritted his fangs and growled in helplessness while his opponent was smirking. After a few minutes, they finally saw their destination. The bottom of the scaled pool was covered in scales of resplendent golden light. Numerous rocks had been covered with scales, making them exceptionally dazzling. Ezra's gaze swept across the area, a puzzled look in his eyes. His sense was not weak, but was unable to discover anything out of the ordinary. Skull continued to descend, landing on the bottom of the pool, before its paws suddenly began to dig at a certain spot. Countless scaled golden rocks were sent flying. A long while later, Ezra's eyes suddenly concentrated. As Skull continued to dig, he saw a damaged golden cauldron appear at the bottom of the scaled pool. Ezra waved his sleeve, sending out a wave of black lightning that swept away the scattered rocks, allowing the cauldron to be fully uncovered. The cauldron was mottled and pretty badly damaged, covered in the vestiges of erosion. It seemed to be exceedingly ordinary, but Ezra Zephyr's gaze was still glued to its surface. One would find ancient drawings on the surface of the cauldron. These patterns looked as if they were naturally formed when the world began, mysterious and immeasurable. Weak rays of light connected the patterns, forming a picture of an august creature. Ezra Zephyr stared hard at the mysterious rune. He felt the spiritual energy in his body turn sluggish at this moment as if under indescribable pressure. It was obvious that this pressure originated from the patterns carved on the cauldron. There is a very familiar aura in it. But I can't recall the origin of this familiarity. Emotions churned in Ezra Zephyr's heart. Moments later, his eyes suddenly flashed. I remember it, it's the same aura from the Spirit tablet. But this was not strange. The Spirit Bailiwick had after all originated from the fallen martial animal. This is the treasure of Spirit Bailiwick. mumbled Ezra Zephyr to himself. The treasure was definitely from the powers who made this unique space. Although he was unable to unravel its mysteries, anyone with half a brain would know that the treasure was extraordinary. If not, Skoll would not have been so insistent. Skoll extended his paw at this moment, pointing towards the cauldron and then pointing towards Ezra Zephyr. "You want me to touch it?" asked Ezra. Skoll nodded repeatedly. "Don't waste your time, I am feeling unique power from it." Skoll is a picky one, unlike my younger son Hattie, who is whimsy, trust him. Fenrir spoke. Hearing that, he smiled at Skoll and nodded. His figure descended as he reached out his hand and very carefully touched the ancient and mysterious golden cauldron. Roarr. The instant Ezra's finger made contact, a deafening roar and blinding light exploded from the cauldron, shooting into the spot between Ezra's brows. Roarr. An explosive roar resounded in Ezra Zephyr's mind the moment the light touched him. Ezra's spiritual energy rippled violently as the world began to spin around him. An unimaginable, enormous ancient beast appeared in front of him, slowly revolving as a terrifying pressure swallowed him. Crack. Cracks instantly appeared on Ezra's core, clearly unable to withstand such pressure. The prince's heart was filled with terror. He knew that his core would not last even 10 seconds under the ancient creature's pressure. If this continued, his core would surely be turned to dust. How did this happen? A cry of horror echoed in his heart. "I can't panic. This core pressure is from this strange creature." Ezra forcibly calmed himself down. He knew that panic would likely only lead to his demise. "Calm down, boy. I'm here," Fenrir said. Ezra took in a deep breath and suddenly closed his eyes as he felt Fenrir roaming inside his body. Boom. The space in Ezra's consciousness began to shatter, turning into an endless starry sky. Within the conscious, a seemingly large black wolf appeared. Ezra was floating in the middle of his consciousness. The black wolf moved forward towards the threat. A blurry long strange creature wildly moved inside his consciousness. Fenrir looked at it. Creaak. Two similarly dangerous monsters met in the conscious. It felt as if the entire space had begun to crack due to their clash. The core-crushing pressure finally faded as Ezra Zephyr gasped as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. His heart thudded loudly as he looked towards the two behemoth existences. What exactly is this thing? To think that it is so frightening that even Fenrir is unable to defeat it. Ezra was inwardly shocked. The black bolts wildly thundered around Fenrir as he howled at the other. It was due to this very black lightning that anyone who touched it faced terrible fates. Every one of those attacks had ultimately been crushed by chaos force, and every spirit was devoured by Fenrir. This time, however, the monstrous wolf of Norse could not display an effect akin to a hot knife through butter. Instead, the ancient creature had been able to withstand its might. The two titans were stuck in a deadlock. "The only thing I can do now is to wait." There was nothing that Ezra could do. A clash of such proportions was not something a chi-brightening stage like him could interfere in. Therefore, he sat down and watched. This lasted for only God knew how long, until even Ezra's mental power began to feel a little exhausted. Boom. Just as Ezra was no longer able to endure, a loud noise suddenly rang out. The prince hurriedly looked over, only to see Fenrir slowly backing away, before ultimately disappearing into his consciousness. "Fenrir, what happened?" On the other hand, rays of light exploded from the creature as it rapidly shrank. In the end, it transformed into a flash of light that descended from the sky and shot into Ezra's head. At the bottom of the scaled pool, Ezra's tightly shut eyes finally opened at this moment. A frightening ripple abruptly pulsed from between Ezra's brows the moment he opened his eyes. The pulse shook the bottom of the scaled pool, forming a gigantic whirlpool with Ezra Zephyr at its epicenter. Endless golden light whizzed over, flooding Ezra's body. Whyish. As the boundless golden light poured in, pitter-patter noises sounded in his body. His flesh and blood began to boil, while more and more golden light flowed into his core, causing the spiritual energy inside to grow steadily. In a short period of several minutes, a layer of foul-smelling scabs appeared on the surface of Ezra's body. It was the impurities that had been expelled. Ezra's Zephyr shook slightly, breaking the scab layer, and revealing skin on which scales were formed. It was an extremely magical sight. Dazzling light blossomed in Ezra's eyes as he felt the strong surge of power in his body, causing bliss to appear on his face. The prince shut his eyes and began to examine himself. It silently sat between his brows, giving off a gentle glow. Compared to before he had entered the scaled pool, his spiritual energy was undoubtedly more concentrated and corporeal, and his body became strong. "Boy, you are lucky, this was a body-strengthening skill." "A skill of a martial animal of the upper realm," said Fenrir. Ezra was astonished. "Upper realm, how did it reach here?" "I am unaware, equilibrium is unbalanced." "However, you should jump for joy. What a crazy blessing. Body-strengthening skills are very rare and powerful. This body, it feels like I am at the peak of 7th level." Ezra's heart was filled with joy. Ezra felt the ancient powers and understood the essence of the skill, that creature of not any lizard but a real high bloodline golden dragon. Known as Mountain Guardian, Themios. The skill is called Dragon Pelt. It had 5 stages. Each stage had different colors, from lowest to highest: purple, red, orange, yellow, and gold. Each stage will increase after consuming a certain set of unique ingredients and pills. Ezra was at the first stage. He called the skill and his arms formed some purple-colored scales. In addition, a faint glow surfaced between the brows of Ezra's, an ancient imprint barely visible. The rune was ancient, holy, and sacred, as if it had been born the moment the world was created. What is this strange imprint? Another blessing. I wonder what function this mysterious imprint has. Ezra Zephyr tried to activate it, only to discover that even after giving his all, the imprint merely brightened a little without any other response. Is it because my strength is lacking? The prince let out a bitter laugh. Evidently, a tremendous amount of power was needed to activate the mysterious spiritual imprint, which he was currently still unable to provide. He inwardly shook his head, and temporarily gave up on the idea, turning his attention instead to his spiritual energy. The spiritual energy inside my body has upgraded. Ezra peered into his core, finding that the black lightning chaos force flickering within was more concentrated and abundant than before, a sign that it had already reached the peak of the 7th level of the chi brightening stage. As expected of the Spirit Bailiwick, a single blessing is akin to reaching the sky in a single step. Ezra's heart overflowed with happiness. His progress was nothing but amazing. His spiritual energy had grown more corporeal, while his realm had received a breakthrough again, ascending to the peak of the 7th level. Most importantly, of course, he had obtained the mysterious body-strengthening skill and a strange spiritual imprint. Although he had yet to discover its abilities, he just knew that they would surely be extraordinary. If I encounter Rolo or again now, I will finally be able to face him in battle. Battle intent burned in Ezra's eyes. The first foe he met in Spirit Bailiwick was Victor Brownmane. The latter's aura alone was pretty worth praising. However, this did not make him depressed. Instead, each thrashing merely served to fuel his growth as the gap between them continued to shrink. Until today. After him, Upper Realm Invaders, a strange enemy who holds a mythical hero as martial spirit, an entity similar to Ezra. It is time to hunt. Iciness flitted across Ezra's eyes. Crack. The sound of something shattering was suddenly heard at the bottom of the scaled pool. The prince looked down and saw the golden cauldron begin to crumble, turning into dust, while the creature-like archaic patterns on it also disappeared. The prince touched his forehead. He knew that the skill and imprint had already been imprinted onto his brain. Following the disintegration of the cauldron, Ezra Zephyr felt the golden light in the pool begins to dim as the golden water gradually returned to clearness. The mysterious scales which covered it also started to fade. Could the scaled pool's energy have come from the golden cauldron? Mumbled the prince to himself. With the body-strengthening skill and mysterious imprint taken, it was naturally unable to distribute its energy, causing the scaled pool to become normal. While Ezra Zephyr was still lost in thought, the pool waters rippled. Skull swam over, circling Ezra Zephyr twice as its beady eyes stared at the spot between Ezra's brows in amazement as if sensing something there. "I almost died there," Ezra said with a sigh. The mysterious creature clearly possessed terrifying power. If not for Fenrir, not only would he have been unable to obtain the strange blessings, he would have likely instead been crushed by its terrifying pressure. Fortunately, the prince had managed to ride it out and had even obtained an enormous reward. Risk and opportunity always came hand in hand. Hence, Ezra did not complain any further, beckoning Skull as he swam towards the surface. After several minutes, he pierced through the water's surface with a plop and landed by the side of the pool. "Your Majesty, you are finally out." Argus's voice was heard the moment he emerged. The prince turned his head and found Argus with a bowing gesture, eyes filled with respect as he stared at him in happiness. "You've been in there for half a month," said Baron. "Half a month?" Ezra was shocked. Ezra's eyes caught a strange sight when he raised his head. Hundreds of figures surrounded the mountaintop. A figure came close and bent a knee. "Welcome back, Your Majesty," greeted Zulfi Dimitri. "You all arrived. Half a month is a long time." "Your Majesty," answered Zulfi with a grin. "So, shall we begin our counterattack?" "Crown Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom." A male voice was heard. Ezra looked, he recognized the face as he uttered. "Hello there, fair sword of humanity." "Thank you for allowing us in the scaled pool," said John Stark. "I don't know what are you talking about," replied the prince. The fair sword smiled and gestured towards a certain cub. Ezra looked and it was Skull. The prince understood and turned his sight back to John Stark. John Stark's wounds were almost healed, and from the spiritual energy undulations spreading from his body, it was clear that he had benefited greatly from the scaled pool too. John Stark shook his head and said, "However, a storm has been gathering in the Spirit Bailiwick over the past half a month. You've missed several major events." Upon hearing this, something clicked inside Ezra Zephyr as he immediately raised his head to look at the Spirity tablet high up in the sky. Next, astonishment and amazement flooded out onto his face. To think that such a huge change has happened to the Spirity tablet. Light still flowed on the Spirity tablet, but an enormous change had occurred to it when compared to half a month ago. The most eye-catching change was the greatly increased number of names on the tablet. Originally, there had only been a handful of people, such as Ezra Zephyr, Shifa Pista, Victor Brownmane, Rolo Or, Salam Uquali, and the rest. But now, the number of names had reached 391. 391 people have gotten their names on the Spirity tablet? Ezra was rather surprised. Since when had it become so easy? Argus raised his face as he explained, "You may not know this, Your Majesty, but during the past half a month, blessings and gifts continuously appeared in the Spirit Bailiwick. After an intense struggle, they were ultimately won by several fortunate individuals. The clear outcome of obtaining such blessings was the rapid increase in strength, allowing one to ascend to a higher level in a single step. Numerous geniuses that had been stuck at the 7th level of the Chi brightening stage had managed to use this opportunity to step into the core formation stage. What's more, the Spirity tablet's rules seem to not be limited to battle accomplishments. Anyone who can obtain blessings and reach the core formation stage will be able to leave their names on the tablet. In other words, the 391 individuals on the tablet all possess the strength of the core formation stage except you. Amazement surfaced in Ezra's eyes. One only needed to step into the core formation stage while obtaining any blessing to leave your name on the Spirity tablet. However, only a handful of geniuses had been able to reach the core formation after entering the Spirity Bailiwick. Now, however, that number had increased to 391. From this, one could see just how beneficial the Spirity Bailiwick was. Ezra Zephyr sighed and began to earnestly inspect the Spirity tablet. While he was looking, his eyes suddenly widened. He had seen a familiar name. Zulfi Dimitri, his very own subject. He looked at him and Zulfi chuckled. "I succeed, your majesty." "Very good, you have impressed me," praised the prince. Said Ezra as he gazed at the tablet again, his eyes widened and widened because he saw many of the other Bloodfang Kingdom's martial masters. Apart from them, the other names he recognized were of Elf Princess, Fairy Hololef, and Stripe Beast Empire's Bearman, Ixtal Malark. The prince read the details. First level of core formation stage, Ixtal Malark. Battle accomplishment, injured first level of core formation stage, Leomord Tigerian. Who is Leomord Tigerian? The curious prince asked. He is the youngest prince of Stripe Beast Empire. The shock occurred in Ezra's mind. He beat the prince? I heard the prince was quite strong. He is, but those upper realm bastards intervened. They intervened. Did Ixtal join them? Zulfi nodded his head and said, "They say that Rolo Or's group collided with Leomord's. It was a terrifying fight," said those who witnessed it. However, Rolo's group was clearly too powerful, and Leo ended up retreating. It was that time when Ixtal attacked him from behind and injured him. Argus piped in, although Ixtal defeated Leomord, he later encountered Acker. It is said that Acker almost killed Ixtal, but Rolo saved him. That fight resulted in Acker's victory. A battle-loving dwarf from Dwarven Kingdom, an apex genius no less than us. Ezra continued to look. Sure enough, he saw another name. Upper Realm, first level core formation stage, Carlo Or. Ezra's eyes widened. "Raja Indarapatra," he murmured, his eyes moving towards the next row of words. Battle accomplishment, defeated Acker Boldheart in a single move. Ezra frowned slightly. These upper realm people are purposely targeting the apex level geniuses in hopes of weakening the morale of the other geniuses, making them no longer have the courage to contest. Simply put, they have made an example. Carlo Or is indeed very powerful. Ezra Zephyr had come into contact with Rolo Or before and knew just how strong he was. He was someone that could escape from Hattie and trapped Skull in space. And the one called Carlo Or is stronger than that younger brother of his. Ezra Zephyr continued to look downwards. After a while, his gaze suddenly paused. XYR went 53 rounds with Carlo Or but ultimately lost. I can't believe he was able to push Carlo Or so far. Ezra was rather amazed. Carlo's strength was immeasurable, and even though they have never met, Ezra could feel that the latter was holding a tremendous amount of power. He never imagined that the next Jin, XYR, would be able to last so long against Carlo Or. He had finally finished reading the entire Spirity tablet. Practically every person on it had become the greatest benefactor of this batch's Spirit Bailiwick. You also seem to have formed your third sorcery circle? Ezra Zephyr's gaze turned towards someone. A certain female came out of the crowd. She moved like the wind, beautiful like nature itself. Hee, how could I stay behind? Fairy Hololef chuckled. The Prince of Bloodfang could feel that the spiritual energy inside her body had grown much stronger. Those undulations belonged to the true early third circle sorcerer. We've at last managed to take that final step thanks to the blessings of this scaled pool. A raspy voice sounded. Ezra pivoted his head, only to find a 5 feet tall man. He had thick curly brownish hair and a braided beard. It was none other than the battle-maniac dwarf, Acker Boldheart. He swung his axe hammer as he smiled at Ezra, even though his thick facial hair refused to reveal his lips. Besides him stood another unique figure. His attire was bestial, and his dark yellow hair and vertical slit pupils showed he was a beast man. You must be Leomord Tigerian, said Ezra. Correct, Leo replied. Baron Cut End. The core formation stage has the ability to connect the formation of the core with spiritual energy, drawing density inside the core, from within to refine more powerful spiritual energy. However, we only advanced recently and do not dare to make any rash attempts. The formation of the core stage was said to be an extremely mysterious phenomenon. However, one would only be able to sense it after reaching that realm. This was also how the core formation stage had derived its name. Ezra nodded as he sighed. It seems that he was the only one that has yet to break through into the higher realm. The apex-level geniuses had borrowed the blessings in this place to rapidly upgrade themselves. It was likely that Victor, Rolo, and their groups had also made substantial progress over the past half a month. If they were to meet again, there would surely be an epic earth-shaking battle. When does the Spirit Bailiwick end? Asked Ezra Zephyr. Argus and Zulfi shook their heads. A familiar voice came. Every batch is different, so no one knows what will happen. Normally speaking, however, once the greatest blessing is taken, the Spirit Bailiwick will change. It was the Ergale arms. The greatest blessing? Ezra pondered. Just as he was about to speak again, a faint stabbing pain was suddenly felt between his brows. An ancient imprint seemed to appear and flicker for a split second. It was at this moment that every genius in the Spirit Bailiwick heard a strange rumbling noise emerge from the Spirit tablet. Millions and millions of light rays slowly blossomed from the Spirit tablet. Rays of light extended as a giant tower slowly emerged from within, appearing within everyone's sight. Light also gathered in front of the tower, forming a platform. Meanwhile, an ancient voice that seemed to have traveled through time echoed across the land, filled with indescribable dignity and mysteriousness. Those whose names are on the tablet may enter the Spirit Tower. The strongest one shall be spared, the rest must fight, and only 16 can move to the next floor. The entire Spirit Bailiwick instantly exploded into an uproar. Countless geniuses wailed because they had yet to leave their names on the tablet. All they could do now was watch, unable to vie for the greatest blessing. Bzzz. The names on the Spirit tablet suddenly started glowing brightly one by one, transforming into a pillar after pillar of light that descended from the sky. The light pillars landed, enveloping 391 figures. The fight for the ultimate blessing of the Spirit Bailiwick had finally begun at this moment. Brush, brush. Giant pillars of light fell from the sky under the attention of countless watching eyes. It was truly a grand sight. The light pillars landed in various areas of the Spirit Bailiwick, but at the end of every pillar was a figure. These people were clearly the owners of the names on the Spirit tablet. In the vicinity of the scaled pool, many pillars of light also descended from the sky, falling upon Ezra Zephyr, Zulfi Dimitri, Shifa Pista, and many more Bloodfang's martial masters. Skull and Hattie, however, were stuck outside the light pillars. Hattie growled, let out a low howl of dissatisfaction, and slammed into one of the light pillars twice, but the latter did not budge at all. Ezra was not surprised, he grasped the reason. Looks like martial animals were not allowed to obtain the greatest blessing of the Spirit Bailiwick, and did not even have the right to enter. He said to him. The prince then realized Argus was not chosen by the tablet, a look of disappointment masked his face. Skull, Hattie, wait here for me, Ezra said, ignoring the regretful face of Argus Waska. Hattie gloomily lay down, displaying a dispirited and downcast look. While Skull was not bothered at all. Baron regretfully said, what a pity. If these two could tag along, it would be a huge aid. Fenrir's son's battle power was not to be underestimated. Didn't everyone see how even Rolo had been injured by it? After lingering in regret for a while, Baron lifted his head, face now filled with excitement as he stared at the Spirit Tower in the sky. He knew that the most intense battle would soon begin. Is the final act about to start? Everything before this was merely akin to little squabbles. Now was the real deal. Under such a situation, even Jon Stark's pale face was now slightly glowed with energy. His sharp eyes were similarly filled with excitement and anticipation. Ezra looked to the sky, his eyes narrowing slightly as he gazed at the pillar of light around him. A sharp force surged as his 5 fingers clenched tightly. Victor, Salim and Rolo. It is time to settle the debt between us. No one can save you now. A wicked grin emerged on his face. In the Spirit Bailiwick, the 391 pillars grew increasingly dazzling as a rising upward force emerged. The 391 figures slowly began to rise towards the platform before the Spirity Tower. Countless geniuses in the Spirit Bailiwick could only watch the slowly rising 391 figures in envy. What a pity to have lost the chance to fight for the greatest blessing. Sigh, my skills were lacking. At least we're lucky enough to personally witness the battle. I wonder who will be the one who will ultimately reach the top. It will likely be Upper Realm invaders and Salam equally. Fair Sword has a good chance too. He is exceedingly powerful, and even survived against Rolo's gang. If we let those Upper Realm bastards obtain the greatest blessing, our Naren continent will lose all face. Don't forget Ezra Zephyr. He was the one who forced Salam and Rolo to join hands, and his strength definitely stands above the crowd. I wonder if we will be able to see his dazzling power today. Heh, truly a battle of the titans. Since we are not fated to be a part of it, we'll just have to play our part as the audience. At least this trip wasn't in vain. Countless regretful whispers rang out in every corner of the Spirit Bailiwick. Under countless watching eyes, 391 figures moved up along the pillar, eventually landing on the giant platform of light. The Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom, Ezra Zephyr, stepped onto the glowing platform, the feeling below his feet as solid as the ground below. His gaze swept across the area. All 391 figures stood on the giant platform, a guarded look in their eyes when they met eyes with one another. Ezra's gaze soon stopped nearby where a beautiful figure stood. Her pretty face seemed to make the others shine with even greater beauty, drawing the attention of several gazes. It was obviously Fairy Hololeth. "Hey, handsome!" Fairy hurriedly waved at him. Upon hearing her voice, Baron cast his gaze over, a faint smile appearing on her aloof face when he saw his princess. He was aware that Fairy was chosen, but still the happiness in his eyes was solid. Another figure calmly walked over, towards Ezra. "You are finally here," said the next Jinn, XYR. XYR replied in a raspy voice, "I can't be that bad, right?" He did not mind, because he knew that Ezra was strong. However, his eyes narrowed slightly as he asked, "Are you prepared to die?" Ezra understood that XYR was referring to the fact that Rolo and the rest will gang up on him. He immediately shook her head. "No, but I am ready to kill." XYR smiled at the foolishness of the former. "Don't look down on the man called Carlo or. In fact, you may not be able to put up a real fight if he's serious." XYR warned. At that very moment, some figures gathered around Ezra. The prince looked at them and questioned. "You want to gang up on me too?" "No, we want to team up," answered the Fair Sword. Ezra turned his eyes to others. The battle maniac dwarf Acker, the youngest prince of Stripe Beast Kingdom Leomord, the enchanter of Elf Patria Fairy. The four apex geniuses were in front of him. "There are three big forces here, one belongs to Rolo the other one is Victor Brownmane and the third is yours," John said. Ezra asked, "How many Bloodfang martial masters are chosen?" Their Galarm quickly respond before Zulfi could utter. 87, Your Majesty." 87? Ezra's eyes widened, he couldn't remember all the names of his people. So when he read the tablet, he was unaware that many names belonged to his kingdom. Isn't it shameful for you to fight as my subordinate, me, who you consider as fake beast man?" Ezra inquired, there was mockery in it, directed towards Leomord Tigerian. "I acknowledge you, and secondly, we do not fight as your subordinates but, as your allies." The anger and shame were visible on Tigerman's face. But before he could retort, another individual spoke. "I will be your subordinate if you beat me in battle, ho ho ho," the one who said was a battle maniac, and no one was surprised. While they were conversing, Ezra's expression suddenly paused before he slowly turned his head. At a certain nearby corner of the platform, several figures were gathered together, an astonishing aura slowly spreading from their bodies. The group was headed by Rolo and Victor Brownmane. Both were discussing something, probably an alliance. Besides these two geniuses, there were also several other geniuses like Rima and Salam. Amongst them were two familiar figures, Ixtal Malark and Emily Jomez. It was clear that Rolo had recruited some members over the past half a month. Rolo and Victor's gazes also turned towards Ezra Zephyr and rest at this moment. Their gazes clashed, sparks seemingly flying while killing intent flowed. Zulfi, Dimitri, Shifa Pista, and their Gale arms also walked forward to stand at Ezra's side, followed by John Stark and others, eyes filled with hostility as spiritual energy surged around their body, creating a similarly powerful presence. The two sides faced each other from far away. The other geniuses withdrew, not daring to stand too close to the two most powerful groups here, such as to avoid being caught in the crossfire. They were confused about which side to choose, because fighting alone would result in a quick death. Rolo's gaze looked towards Fairy Hololeth as he softly sighed and said, I never expected the one that gave me such a huge headache in finding John Stark would be such an amazing pretty beauty. However, I will not show any mercy regardless of sex. Fairy's eyes narrowed slightly as dangerous light flitted across her eyes. Just as she was about to speak, a figure in black clothes slowly walked out. The faint dragon images on his clothes gave strange feelings, his hand on the grip of a scythe that stood on the floor. If we meet in the Spirity Tower, your opponent will be me. A hoarse voice stealthily sounded. On the platform, the pupils of numerous geniuses shrank, fear flashing in their eyes as they stared at the figure in black robes. The one who had spoken was the next Jinn of Cult, XYR. I fought your brother, Carlo. Now I will check if you, the one who relies upon gangs, are worthy to be called his brother. Rolo's eyes twitched in anger. Hey Victor, I know you have some personal quarrels with the Bloodfang Kingdom, but we must see which one of the tribes is more powerful, a lion man or a tiger man. A powerful voice rang out at this moment. One could only watch as a muscular figure stepped forward. It was a bestial-attired young man whose eyes were akin to a ferocious tiger that was filled with wild vengeance. He was Leomord. Victor cast an indifferent glance at him. The current you are not my match. His gaze then slowly turned towards Ezra Zephyr. It seems that you didn't bring those dogs along. The prince stared at Victor, sharp light in his eyes as he softly said, Victor, there are some words I've been wanting to give you to convey them to your brother. Enjoy the things you took from me a while longer, because I will soon personally take them back. BOOM. At this moment, terrifying killing intent suddenly exploded from Victor's body. Dreadful killing intent swept across the glowing platform like a wave, causing the expressions of several top-tier geniuses to change slightly, their gazes filled with fear as they looked towards Victor. Under the attention of the crowd, Victor's eerily chilling eyes stared at Ezra Zephyr. The most pitiful thing about you is that you don't deserve to possess such things. Moreover, it is said that you still naively believe that you will be able to take them back. Ezra Zephyr. Mockery rose from the corners of Victor's lips. This time I will let you understand that you were only a carrier for the sacred martial spirit, while my brother Benedict Brownmane was its true owner. I will show you the taste of true despair. Powerful and domineering spiritual energy violently unfurled from Victor's body like a storm, his voice almost a growl as it rang in everyone's ears. Several gazes were cast towards Ezra Zephyr at this moment, most of them containing some pity. Although Ezra had reached the peak of the 7th level chi brightening stage, when compared to Victor, the gap between them was still far too large. However, some of the bystanders didn't forget the match between Ezra and Ixtal. They knew Ezra has the power. Though the focus of Victor's murderous gaze and numerous gazes of pity, there was no change in Ezra's expression. He merely chuckled softly and said, You've already declared the exact same thing back when I was still at the 5th level chi brightening stage, but unfortunately, things have never turned out as you wished. That's why, dear Victor, you will still be disappointed this time. Their gazes clashed in mid-air, spiritual energy so thick that even the surrounding air felt a little colder. While killing intent dripped from the air, a rumbling sound was suddenly heard from the Spirity Tower behind the platform. Numerous geniuses swiftly turned their gazes to see the giant doors of the tower slowly opening. The Spirity Tower is opening. Everyone's eyes instantly lit up with boiling excitement. The greatest blessing of the Spirit Bailiwick was inside the Spirity Tower, and it was likely the fabled treasure land. Everyone on the platform had obtained a portion of the Spirit Bailiwick's treasures, however, it was nothing compared to the one before their eyes. Obtaining it would be akin to rocketing straight into the higher realms, surpassing everyone else. In the face of such temptation, none of those present could maintain a heart as cool and collected as still water. With the exception of Ezra, his red eyes that looked towards the spirity tower were akin to a calm pool, without even the slightest ripple of emotion. In fact, his shapely eyebrows had even slightly knitted together. He did not know why, but the tower gave him an indescribable feeling. As if he had seen it somewhere before. However, no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to recall anything. It was a feeling that he did not like. The spirity tower is open, let's enter quickly. The tower doors opened fully. The platform was silent for a split second before figure after figure rapidly shot forth like a swarm as they charged towards the doors. Even Rolo and Victor Brownmane exchanged a look, before swiftly turning around, leading their groups as they made a beeline towards the doors. Ezra Zephyr looked towards Zulfi Dimitri and the rest as he said, "We should go too." The minority group of Group Apex geniuses looked at each other. Until a certain individual came to them. "Hello Fair Sword, His Majesty Ezra Zephyr has allowed you all to be merged with us, let's not waste time." The one who carried the message was the Regale Arms. The group of geniuses naturally had no objections. In fact, they were filled with eagerness. "Go," said Fair Sword. SWWIISH. Spiritual energy whizzed out, transforming into numerous glowing figures that ultimately dashed into the spirity tower under the countless envious watching eyes in the Spirit Bailiwick. There were also many people gathered here. They represented the various factions and clans of the Naren continent and were waiting here for the final outcome of the Spirit Bailiwick. There were hundreds of thousands of screens on mid-air, produced by bees to let everyone outside know what is happening inside. They knew that the outcome would very likely change the faction landscape of the Naren continent. In the sky, 7 streams of majestic spiritual energy surged in the sky, forming 7 clouds. 7 figures were seated on these clouds, the pressure from their bodies causing reverence to appear on the faces of the many faction representatives present. They were the 7 envoys of first-degree sex. With the exception of some who were seated right beneath them, showing that they are envoys of second-degree sex. Their eyes had been closed since the beginning, bodies still as statues. Today, however, those tightly shut eyes suddenly twitched, before slowly opening. The special tower inside the Spirit Bailiwick has appeared. 6 gazes were cast towards the screen on which he was looking at the inside of Spirit Bailiwick. They could faintly sense a strange undulation appear inside the Spirit Bailiwick at this moment. The Spirity Tower has indeed appeared. The eyes of the Holy Law Sex envoy known as Levos narrowed slightly as they stared at the Spirity Bailiwick. Light flickered in his eyes, but only he knew what was on his mind. Towards another direction, the well-maintained man that had once helped Ezra Zephyr lightly tapped his pipe. A complicated look was revealed in his gaze as he looked towards the Spirity Bailiwick. "Heh, I wonder who will obtain the greatest blessing in this batch's Spirity Bailiwick." One of the 7 chuckled. The fair clean-shaven Levos smiled thinly. "Victor possesses great luck, is blessed by the heavens, and has an amazing talent. There is no doubt that he is number 1 amongst the younger generation of the Naren continent. The blessing will surely end up with him." The well-maintained man called Arama Finwi scoffed. "From your tone, it seems that your holy law sect has already reserved him in advance." Levos glanced at the former. "A phoenix will seek the best tree to perch. Isn't this very normal? Victor Brownmane has made the best decision." "Best tree? Heh." Arama sneered, intense iciness in his voice as he continued, "Do you holy law sect people dare to enter the Spirity Bailiwick?" Levos indifferently replied, "Arama, it seems that you still refuse to let go of the matter that happened back then. That ancestor of yours disobeyed the Spirity Order, drawing the fury of the destiny. He has only himself to blame for his fate. If you have any opinions, feel free to debate them in the sect. However, your sect has recently become first-degree sect. Do you think you have become number one? Haha, you should save yourself from those savages. Orama's hand tightened around his pipe, killing intense spitting from his eyes. Levos, however, still had the same icy grin on his face. Spiritual energy drummed around him, forming a grand, magnificent cloud that churned behind him as an overwhelming pressure spread. The atmosphere between the two instantly turned hostile. Alarm and surprise filled the faces of the numerous representatives below as they gazed upon this scene, clearly unable to comprehend why the two envoys had been angered. The other 5 envoys spoke out to douse the sparks. No need to argue, you two, they've already entered the Spirity Tower, and we should also begin. Levos and Orama coldly snorted as they withdrew their boundless spiritual energy. Let's begin. The 7 envoys formed seals with their hands. Boundless spiritual energy suddenly shot forth, swirling in the air in front of them as it gradually turned into a giant spiritual energy mirror. Light gathered within the mirror as a picture slowly appeared. If one took a closer look, one would see the 391 figures that had entered the Spirity Tower. The yellow bees could not enter the tower just like Skull and Hattie, but the envoys had the alternative. After the 391 figures entered, they saw a towering majestic Colosseum that stretched even further than the end of their sights. The grand and vast Colosseum also appeared in the mirror. Outside the Spirit Bailiwick, the various representatives seemed to jolt awake as their gazes looked towards the mirror. They knew that the subsequent battle would definitely shake the entire Naren continent. Who would be able to distinguish themselves from the numerous elite geniuses, and make everyone else tremble before them? So this is the inside of the Spirity Tower. Inside the Spirity Tower, Ezra Zephyr lifted his head, astonishment involuntarily appearing on his face as he gazed upon the seemingly endless majestic Colosseum that had appeared before his eyes. The giant mountain gave off a majestic glow, faint mist swirling around it. The top was hidden in the mists that no one present was able to peer through. 391 figures stood on the ground of the Colosseum, their heads tilted upwards to gaze upon it. The ground of the Colosseum was made of a very unique stones, reddish in color as if they were washed by a flood of blood and broom of weapons. Everyone gazed at each other, waiting for an announcement. Now was the time to decide the side. On one side were Rolo or Victor Brownmane, Salam Yukwali, and Ixtal Malarka's people. On the other side stood Ezra Zephyr, John Stark, Ferry Hololeth, Leomord, and Acker. Behemoths on both sides, but the one leaning was on Rolo's side. They had around 156 members, together with victors. Meanwhile, Ezra had 87 of Bloodfang Kingdom's martial masters, including himself and 5 apex geniuses of empires. The remaining 143 were puzzled. However, that situation broke out as one joined Rolo's side. One after another, all the 143 people joined them, even some elves betrayed their Princess Fairy and joined them. 299 versus 92, which was the ratio of both sides. Regardless of the difference, an expression of delight could be seen in his eyes. He was happy to devour more of them. It was at that time a loud voice rang across the Colosseum. Martial masters who have reached so far, you truly are great offsprings of this continent. The one named, Carlo or, has been sent to the next floor, as he has the capability of eliminating everyone here. The unknown voice widened the eyes of geniuses. There were 391 people, but a single individual had the power to eliminate them all. Rolo or gritted his teeth as he stared at the mist-filled roof. The voice continued. As for the rest, fight till only 6 of you remains. Either die or surrender, there are no other options for leniency. As the words ended, the gazes and eyes filled with a murderous aura. 299 versus 92 martial masters, a one-sided battle if one sees as neutral. Armaments were revealed, swords unsheathed, bowstrings pulled. Kill them all, said Rolo. Spare none, yelled Victor. Don't spare the Prince of Stripe Beast Kingdom, cried Ixtal Malark. Seeing the incoming attackers, Ezra quickly gave his instructions. Apex geniuses against apex geniuses, leave the remaining to Bloodfang Kingdom's martial masters. Our side is outnumbered, uttered Fairsword. On which Acker loudly laughed. I love being outnumbered. Go, said the werewolf prince. The 91 people rushed forwards, while Ezra remained where he was. Although they were marching at terrifying speed, but for some reason, everyone felt as if the time has slowed down. They could see each other's shiny weapons, the pressure in the air, and their own heartbeats sounding like a ritual drum. No one knew who will die, but everyone had one thought in their mind: it was the hope of survival. Kill. HIA. Rare. A last battle cry before the collision. Reveal the armaments, now. Hollered the prince, his voice resounded. Sheen tongue. The martial masters of Bloodfang Kingdom swapped their weapons. Rolo, who stayed behind like Ezra, was baffled. Boom, bomb, clang, catch heat. Two gangs finally collided, and spiritual energy rippled like chaotic waves of the ocean. Surprise surfaced in Rolo's eyes, as he witnessed his side blown away. What is this? How? Why does every one of them possess a special tier weapon? He pondered. Rolo was not the only one shocked. Victor, Salim and others were bewildered likewise. Don't hesitate, we have numbers, said Salim. At the same time, he felt a strange danger from his left side. His instincts allowed him to quickly raise his sword. Clang. He heard a mocking chuckle. Haha, focus on protecting yourself first, said Zulfi Dimitri as his sword was thwarted by Salim equally. I was waiting for you, Bloodfang bastard. The genius of Uquali clan retorted. Ixtal Malark swung his axe at his enemy, an attack meant to kill. Kung. Unfortunately, it was blocked by Labries. Ixtal recognized the figure who handled his attack with ease. He cussed in anger. Ho! Look who is saying, the one who left his girl to die and ran with tail between legs. Want me to tell you how our prince killed that girl? What was her name again? Yes. Skylese. Shifa uttered, his face was grave and his words filled with iciness. Rage boiled within Ixtal. I won't forgive you, he said. At the same Colosseum, Emily Jomez helped his side with the blood magic she inherited from her late father. Her eyes fell on Salim facing Zulfi. She rushed to give aid. Swish, swish. A pair of curved short swords danced, halting her steps as a voice came. Just where do you think you're going? You have yet to pay for the trouble you gave us during the auction. Their Galarm spoke as he raised his swords. Emily gritted her teeth and prepared herself for the fight. On the other side, Rima moved like a rampage phoenix. Her whip of acid hurt her enemies. Until she felt something coming towards her. Clang. She used her fan and bounced the attack back. It was a spear, thrown by Baron. Hello there, how does it feel to be attacked by surprise? Said Baron with a smile. Hee, that was an attack? I thought you threw a rose at me. Her words ended and her attack began. Whip and fan, both had a different kind of offense. Slash zong. It was the time when Baron realized he was no match for this upper realm girl. Few rounds of clashes, and he only managed to protect himself. Hee, an adorable chuckle resounded, forcing Rima to divert her attention. She found a beautiful figure in a green dress. Her attire resembled nature itself, deep, mysterious, and beautiful. She has never seen anyone that beautiful, even though she was a peerless beauty as well, but the one in front was something else. Don't bully our handsome Baron, play with me. Fairy Hololeth chose her target. How cute. I wonder what your face will look like after I burn it. Hee. Rima chuckled. Contrary to her smiling face, she was jealous and furious. Meanwhile, Acker Boldheart was looking at a baby-faced youth named Carl. He was the companion of Rolo or from the upper realm. You are still alive after facing Carlo? Quite impressive for a midget, said Carl. Ho, you fight with your words, huh? If not, then come and let me enjoy the battle. Such one-sided defeat and you still want to go? Acker guffawed. Ho, they call me Battle Maniac for a reason. At the other part of the Colosseum, Victor Brownmane was looking at another apex genius. Just like the werewolves of Bloodfang Kingdom, the person in front of him was his common enemy. The youngest prince of Stripe Beast Empire, Leomord Tigerian. Aren't you ashamed that you knelt before Upper Realm invaders? Was your defeat so obvious that it left you no choice? The words of Leomord were piercing like arrows. Victor twitched his brow. It was a mutual alliance, lower-brained beings like you cannot understand. Leomord stayed silent and moved forward. Victor didn't hesitate a bit and did the same. Boom. An explosion occurred as two mighty beastmen faced each other. Amidst the chaos in the Colosseum, a figure in white attire slid his way, gashing the sides of people with his great white sword as he moved. His feet stopped when he reached a certain place, his eyes stuck on an individual, iciness covered his scarred face. "You wanted to kill me, here I am," said the fair sword of humanity as he continued. "There was already tension in our continent, you forced the future generation of our continent against each other. I can't spare you." Rolo Orf sighed. "3 things for you to understand as quickly as possible, of course, for your own good. First, I forced none, I gave an offer and your precious continent's new generation accepted. Thirdly, for us upper realm people, you guys are nothing but disposable materials. What caught our attention was the Spirit Bailiwick, not you guys." Jon Stark clenched the hilt of his sword tightly. He was furious, but he knew whatever the man in front saying is true. There is nothing more to talk about. Fair Sword swung his sword at Rolo or. The former smiled and vanished from where he was before. Fair Sword's eyes widened. "Fair Sword of humanity, this man is my prey," said someone. Jon Stark quickly pivoted his head to gaze at the origin of the voice. It was a man with a scythe. "Please, let me fight him," requested Jon Stark. "I can't, I have to kill him." Xyr was firm. "Haha, did my brother send you to kill me?" asked Rolo. Xyr looked at him and remained silent. "There is no one who faced Carlo and came back alive, he must have made a deal with you. Isn't it?" asked Rolo. "The dead doesn't need to know anything," retorted Xyr. All of a sudden, spiritual energy around Rolo or raised tremendously, and his gray eyes became terrifying. He murmured, "Why, brother? Why? You think these punks are strong enough to kill me? How long will you keep disrespecting me, brother?" Rolo stopped and gazed at Xyr and Jon before he spoke again. "You both, come at me together." There was sheer killing intent in his words. Jon Stark flinched a little. This pressure, he is different from our previous encounter. Xyr felt a familiar sensation. He is the same type of monster as his brother, I underestimated him. "Come on!" cried Rolo. The killing intent and intense pressure made the ongoing battle pause for a moment. Every eye turned towards the powerful mana surging within the man in a loincloth, Rolo or. Crackle, crackle. The sound of thundering bolts echoed, dwindling the attention. Clop, clop, clop. The steps of a certain individual made the tip-a-tap sound, diverting the focus to himself as black chaotic bolts flickered around his body. Seeing the stunned expression of everybody, Ezra Zephyr grinned. "That's the entry I always dreamt of. Anyone here with good writing skills? I want a novel based on my story." He looked at Jon Stark and Xyr. Ezra turned his sight towards Rolo or and continued. "We have a lot to discuss with each other. Haha, you are a unique individual, Prince of Bloodfang. You gave me numerous troubles, yet I couldn't kill you. It's hard to believe that the one with the weakest cultivation is leading a group of apex geniuses." Ezra chuckled in response. "Come on now, you are no less, you came from above and built the biggest faction as soon as you arrived." "Tell me your secret?" Rolo asked. It seemed his peevishness decreased. "You can say it's a perk of being a prince," Ezra replied. "Perk of being a prince? You don't know? You can ask your martial spirit, he was once a prince too. Raja Solomon, from the kingdom of Bumbaran." The evil grin uncovered itself. At that very moment, for the first time in Spirit Bailiwick, Rolo experienced fear. In the gigantic Colosseum inside of the mysterious Spirit Tower, Rolo was shocked to his utmost. His eyes widened and his mouth agape as he stared at Ezra Zephyr. His expression showed that he was in dire surprise. To be more accurate, it was not just him but also the other two from the upper realm who were shocked. The expression of Rima and Carl was similar to that of Rolo. How do you know about Raja Solomon? Questioned Rolo, his voice shuddering. On which Ezra grinned as he answered. You revealed your martial spirit during your pathetic retreat. Rolo retorted, cut the crap, no one in the lower realm is supposed to know about mythical martial spirits. Who are you? All of a sudden, a thought came to his mind, and his lips opened. No wait, it's not you. It's your martial spirit. Quite slow, aren't you? Ezra mocked. A sudden fear arose inside of Rolo, all this time he acted powerful knowing that no one in this lower realm could be his rival. Even to fill the smallest holes, he made a group of his own, with Salim as a pawn. Everything was going according to his wishes until this very day. Do you possess a mythical martial spirit as well? Asked Rolo as a drop of sweat rolled down from his temple. The prince, instead of a verbal answer, nodded his head slightly, with his lips wickedly widened. Who is it? Rolo was frustrated. You think I wowed boy. Before the prince could say, the monstrous wolf of Norse called him. I'm listening. The werewolf prince answered the call. Tell him this $######. Haha, you wanna be God, you are malicious. Ezra chuckled before he looked at Rolo. The martial spirit I possess is from ancient Greek. The extreme shock grew even more. Out of all mythology, he has the spirit from Greek. He pondered. Ezra continued. You lots are not worthy to fight me, call the holders of Bathala or Kinlan to fight me, haha. It was the crossing line of Rolo's patience, how dare you? The peevishness in his eyes flared like a blaze, he rushed towards the Prince of Bloodfang. Finally a death match after so long, murmured he, as his both arms swung, bringing a hook and a short sword. Clang. A loud metallic noise resounded as the duo collided. The weapon Rolo wielded was a cutlass, a strange grayish cutlass that possessed a very sharp edge. How dare you disrespect Los Filipinos? Cried Rolo as his cutlass descended towards Ezra. Ho! Was that disrespect? I thought I merely stated facts. Responded Ezra as he raised his hook to block the incoming attack. Qatangg. With a blasting noise, cutlass against the hook, Ezra's left arm trembled from the impact. But he didn't use his other arm. Rolo's eyes were red in ferocity. The cutlass pushed down the hook. His strength. Ezra was losing in might, he swung his right arm and blocked the cutlass with his short sword. To his jolt, the two of his arms couldn't block the single-armed attack from Rolo. Ha! Cried Ezra as the lightning bolts flickered around his body. It was not a surprise that Ezra lost in strength. He was at peak of the chi brightening stage, but the one he was dueling came from the upper realm, owned an 8th grade martial spirit and was trained for this. You took the name of Lord Bathala with that nasty mouth of yours, I will show you the difference between us. So what if you are from Greek? Our Lord Bathala's host is no weaker than the host of Zeus. Uttered Rolo. Ezra gazed at the barely 18-years-old youth in front of him and said, I guess, I have no other choice. The shoved his hands inside the long coat sleeves. Klik. The loud sound of unlocking was heard by Rolo. Soon the prince took out his hands, and there was a bracer in each of his hands. At first, Rolo squinted his eyes in confusion, but soon after, he burst into laughter. Ha ha ha, you think that mere bracers off and your strength will rival mine's? All good about you is your martial spirit, but unlike you, I am at a higher realm, a big boon for me. The bracers flew high in the sky, and at some point, they vanished in the mist for a second before being seen again as they descended down like two meteors. Banning. Titanic blasts occurred as the two bracers hit the stone ground. The special stones on the ground cracked a little with the blow. Rolo or blinked in bewilderment. Did he wear them all the time? He asked himself. Invader of the upper realm, here I come, said Ezra as he dashed forward. Crackle. Just like an embodiment of lightning, Ezra moved at a frightening speed, and Rolo Or's eyes moved to keep track of him. This speed, it's beyond the realm of the chi brightening stage. Just who is his martial spirit? He pondered. At that very moment, a black flash gleamed at his side. Rolo quickly swung his cutlass. Clang. The short sword struck against the grayish cutlass of Rolo Or. There is only one possible answer to your speed, a spiritual imprint. You have used a speed rune. Rolo uttered as his grayish eyes met the scarlet eyes of Ezra Zephyr. He spoke, these bracers had special imprints on them, you activated the imprints right before you took them off, those loud clicking sounds from earlier proved the imprints are activated. The facial expression of Ezra Zephyr turned rigid, there was a strange sense of worry in his eyes. If that was your trump card, then you should cry, because I am your nemesis. What do you mean? The worried Ezra asked. You'll know soon. Rolo ended his words as his other hand extended. Fourth circle spell, Void Grasp. BBBZZZZMM. A spell formula was formed, grayish energy befell on 50 square meter area, and all those in that area became color blind. They could see nothing but grayish color, even the people around turned grayish. Ezra felt strange restrictions placed upon him. This is a fourth circled spell that I have cast, within the area, no imprints will work. Your trump card failed you. Ezra gulped, he jerked his head at his sides, to get the gist of the surroundings. Rolo Or knew that Ezra would do something to get out of the spell area. Like hell, I'll let you do anything, said Rolo as he went with a grayish cutlass in his hand. Ezra started to run, his speed decreased tremendously. I knew it, I was right. He used an imprint, smirk revealed on his face. Tell your Greek bastards that the one who killed you was from Las Filipinas. Cutlass was swung at Ezra Zephyr, and at that exact moment, a chuckle was heard by Rolo Or. Huh. Bangg. A punch landed on his abdomen, a powerful punch that Rolo has never received before. He was thrown away by the impact, the blow damaged his inner parts, and saliva dripped from his mouth as he curled up in a ball. Even an insane could understand that he was in a tremendous amount of pain. Cough cough, how did your cough imprint work? Asked Rolo as he wiped the corners of his mouth. The only imprint the bracers have is a weight-increasing imprint, your spell cancelled and let me use all my power, answered Ezra. You mean, this speed is your? Yes, my natural speed. Prince grinned as he swung the hook called Dripa. Rolo's eyes widened, and despite being in a pain, he jumped away. Not so easy. Ezra released the chains, and the reach of Dripa increased. Thuff. The hook dug into the bicep of Rolo Or, he cried and quickly jerked his arm, not allowing Dripa to dig any more deeper. The hook came back to his master, the spell Void Grasp ended and everything came back to normal, especially the color. That shitty spell gave me a headache, Ezra said. Everyone watching was baffled, they stared at Ezra Zephyr in astonishment. Rolo Or, the biggest name in Spirit Bailiwick, was bleeding while the one considered as weakest gave him the such wound. Ezra noticed the mass of gazes and retorted. Don't you have your own battle to fight? If any martial master from my kingdom lacked, I will personally kill him. These words were enough to ignite the extinguished fire of battle. Rima and Carl, who wanted to interfere with Ezra and Rolo's fight, continuously stopped by Ferry and Acker. Let me go, before I kill your midget arse. Carl cussed. Ho ho, you meant my dwarvish arse? Ho ho. You are a worthy opponent, I won't let you go anywhere, replied Ackmer Boldheart. Hee hee, how can I? You were the one who launched a surprise attack on Baron, face the consequences, said Ferry Hololeth. The battle for higher rank unfolded in the Colosseum. Ezra Zephyr maliciously glanced at the opponent who was bleeding from his arm. A voice came inside Rolo's head. Rolo, I feel a powerful existence inside that man. Be careful, he seemed very dangerous. I know Solomon, I just made a terrible mistake. Answered the man in a loincloth. Quickly kill him before your body dash. Shut up. I know, damn it. He became furious at the words of Solomon, and the martial spirit of Rolo became silent. I have a question for you, or, if I rephrase the sentence, I am inquisitive. Said the Prince of Bloodfang. Rolo stood up, the hole on his arm healed, and the dripping blood halted its flow outside. He looked at the former with questionable eyes. Ezra continued. No matter how I see you, you are not suitable as a close combat sorcerer. You use space magic, fighting in a distance is the best option you have. Rolo laughed. So generous of you, advising your enemy in the middle of a fight. Lower realm sure is unique. Ezra chuckled as he palmed his face. You are mistaken, I am neither a saint nor a fool. I am just curious whether you have something up to your sleeves, or you are stupid, straight up. Rolo furrowed, his expressions told that Ezra has touched his sore spot. If that's what you want, said Rolo as he widened his eyes, vortexes began to spin inside his pupil. As a huge surge of spiritual mana occurred, even Ezra Zephyr was surprised. The surging mana overlapped his body, as he uttered. Come, Raja Solomon. BBZZZZZZZZZZ. A tornado of mana rose from within Rolo and a figure made of spiritual energy emerged. A giant figure, he wore a loincloth like that of Rolo, a red scarf was wrapped around his head, a strange wavy sword was in his hand, and he had a sleeveless torso attire worn. 8 orbs rotated behind Rolo the grey mana he emitted was beyond the imagination of anyone present. Rolo revealed his martial spirit, the infamous hero of Las Filipinas, the prince of the ancient Bumbaran kingdom, Raja Solomon. Seeing the 8 orbs around his back, the sight of Ezra flinched. Even the apex geniuses like John Stark, Ferry Hololeth, Leomord Tigerian and Aker Boldherd had despairing look on their face. On the other side, the eyes of Salam Yukwali and others looked at Rolo without blinking. Victor Brownmane was astonished as well. At that point he wondered whether it was a good decision to join hands with him or bad, because he was assured that with such a terrifying figure present, he won't be able to get the greatest blessing. Ezra's heartbeat rose. Fenrir, what now? Your stupid provocation won't kill me, right? To be fairly candid, I do not know, answered the wolf. You stupid shitty wannabe god, you are aware that both of us will die, and you are included in both of us. Quit it, boy. He will do it, soon. Rolo changed his gaze, he directed it towards the martial masters of Bloodfang Kingdom, overwhelming the gang he made in Spirit Bailiwick. 5th circle spell, Abyssal Slash. Uttered Rolo The giant of martial spirit Raja Solomon raised the wavy sword together as Rolo waved his cutlass. A simple swing from them produced a visible grayish color slash, the mana imbued within the slash was simply unbelievable. Watch out! Yelled Zulfi Dimitri. But to their misfortune, they didn't get the chance to dodge that. The slash simply went through the 6 martial masters, who were fighting in a group. The abyssal slash was 3 inches wide, as it passed through. 3 inches of their body disappeared from Bloodfang martial masters, soon the blood gushed out and made a pool of blood around them. Ezra Zephyr gritted his teeth, he didn't yell but he was furious. These martial masters were like treasured weapons for him, and even a single loss of them was unacceptable. The calm werewolf is getting angry, I'm getting excited, said Rolo as he changed his gaze towards another side. A side where their Gale Arm was fighting against Emily Jomez, both of them had allies with them to assist. 5th circle spell, Abyssal Slash. Uttered Rolo a formula with 5 circles was made, and both Rolo and his martial spirit Raja Solomon waved their hands. Another slash occurred, directed straight towards their and his 4-man group. Shifa Pista, who was the nearest one, tried to help but was ultimately stopped by Ixtal Malark. Unlike the prior victims, Thor was cautious of his surroundings. His ears twitched as he looked towards the incoming attack. Humph. Without further ado, he stomped his foot on the ground. Beta layer skill, twin crescent. Two crescent-like chi blades erupted from the loyal crescent short swords in his hands. Golden chi around them headed like a raging bull and encountered the abyssal slash spell. Bzzz Zayu. The beta layer skill lasted for mere seconds as the spell sliced through it. Thor closed his eyes, accepting fate as he murmured. I am sorry, Your Majesty. The fifth circled grayish spell called Abyssal Slash was a few meters away. It was at that time a figure appeared. Gamma layer skill, slice the heavens. A sharp whitish chi surged and a gigantic greatsword came into being. A pure sharp chi danced at the edge of that skill-made sword, even the air striking divided into two. SWWIASH. The sword slashed downwards at the incoming slash. Gamma layer skill, slice the heavens against fifth circled spell, Abyssal Slash. Boom. Both destroyed each other, a humongous wave of spiritual energy, blowing many weak figures away. The loud collision hit the ears of the regale arms as well. He touched his all body parts with his eyes closed, including his precious dome head or especially his dome head. He even viciously pulled it to make sure it was there. Huh, I am alive, he said as he opened his eyes. Hello there, Mr. There, said a man in white. Thor looked at that figure as his voice uttered in surprise. Fair sword of humanity, you saved me? Haha, yes, I did. You can stop pulling that thing, it's dangerous for your manhood, replied John Stark. Huh. Oh haha. He laughed to save his embarrassment. TSK, I should have killed you first, said Rolo. You should have, replied John Stark. Meanwhile, Ezra sighed to calm his anger and looked at the genius from Cult of Jinns. Hey, scythe guy. Ezra spoke. I am XYR. Yes, Sky the guy XYR. Either help me in killing that guy or go and kill his allies, responded Ezra. You are not worthy of ordering me, I can have your head for that. He looked at the Rolo who was ready for another spell and continued. But this time I'll let it slide. Mana in his body started to surge, his right body emitted cold mana and his right side produced heat. Come out, twin dragons. Buys. A gigantic deluge of mana, a phenomenon that made everyone shocked. The right side of XYR, especially his arm, became white and frozen. Meanwhile, the left arm was akin to a bright orange molten steel, emitting small breaths of fire, and droplets of lava fell and made a whooshing sound. Soon, two dragons emerged. On the right side was a tall dragon, it had spikes around its neck, and everything it did have something to do with ice. Its name was Cyrosis, Glacier Dragon. The other was not small in the least, it roared roughly as it shook its spikeless head, although it was spikeless one could feel as if its skin was that of frozen lava. That one had the name of Pyrosis, Molten Dragon. Another surprise to everybody present. Two martial spirits, yelled someone. No wonder, he was able to get so far without any allies, said Acker Boldheart. Rolo's heart sank. What in the Bathala's name is wrong with this lower realm? Just how could a host hold two martial spirits? A pair of 5 orbs rotated around the back of XYR, each dragon was a 5th grade martial spirit. The orbs shined and merged slowly as the rotation speed increased. WHHEEM. With a flash of light, the pair of 5 orbs merged into one, and created 7 orbs, which rotated behind XYR. His power was akin to the top apex geniuses of this continent. The only people with 7th grade martial spirit in this generation of Naren continent were John Stark and Ferry Hololeth, and even Victor Brownmane and other so-called apex geniuses had 6th grade martial spirit. XYR said nothing and quietly hummed. Rayor, Grayer. The duo of dragons roared and XYR jumped towards Rolo. Fourth circle, spell, Gale of Glacier. The right hand of XYR moved, a formula with 4 circles was formed, and a thick cold air went towards the man in a loincloth. At the very same time XYR murmured again. Fourth circle spell, Magma Coating. The scythe was covered with a bright orange layer of mana. He jumped amidst the gale and used its force to speed up. He swung his scythe like a professional as he marched towards the host of Raja Solomon. Magma and ice mana emitted out as if they were performing a pair dance. XYR, with the scythe in his hand, slid with the help of Gale. Wherever the icy wind blew, the area turned into frost. Seeing the incoming attack spell, Rolo raised his cutlass. Abyssal Slash. The grayish attack emerged again, this time the direction was towards XYR. The next Jin struck the end of his scythe and made a diversion, letting the Gale of Glacier to hit Abyssal Slash. The spell of Rolo Abyssal Slash cut through Gale of Glacier like a hot knife cutting through butter. Boom. Abyssal Slash hit the empty ground, and the space magic imbued in it took a huge chunk off of it, forming a cleanly made gash on the ground. The ground had strange spiritual imprints on it as well. Gigantic smoke emerged from it. Fortunately, XYR was able to divert himself. Rolo's eyes squinted, and vortexes in his eyes spun. There. He swung his cutlass in that direction. Clang. Cutlass was blocked by the scythe of XYR, and the surging mana coming from Rolo was overwhelming. XYR was able to maintain his position through Magma Coating spell. XYR swung his scythe down, aiming the head of Rolo but the effort was easily blocked by Rolo KOONGH. Both armaments against each other, trying their best to assure their wielder's victory, Rolo and XYR both poured their strength. I am no more underestimating any of you, with the current me, you have no chance. Sod Rolo. Less talk and more fight. Suggested XYR as he let go of his scythe. PHHUUUNNG. The scythe was thrown away by the power of Rolo's side, and as a huge swing was made by Rolo he became unbalanced. Seeing the rare opening, XYR bent down and dashed, closing the distance by 1 foot quickly. His hand went to a pouch hanging on his waist, the hand came out holding a dagger. SWWIASSSH. A thrust from XYR, focusing the center of Rolo's stomach. Nice move. Praised Ezra as his fingers moved. Just when the top of the sharp shiny dagger was about to penetrate the belly of the upper realm invader, he vanished. XYR's heart skipped a beat, and the next moment he realized that Rolo was standing behind him, maliciously attempting to swing the cutlass. Second circle spell, Finite Teleport, murmured Rolo as he continued right after. Told you, you have no chance. Finite Teleport is a low-level teleportation spell that can teleport within a small range. The consumption of mana is quite small but its usefulness in battle is huge. This time it was XYR who was off the balance. He inserted a lot of power behind his thrust to ensure the speed and power packed behind it. His eyes looked at the descending cutlass. The aim of the cutlass was XYR's neck, very precise. Second circle spell, Chains of Chaos. Crackle. With a thunderous sound, 2 chains rapidly came and caught the wrist of Rolo What? Rolo was surprised. The reason behind his astonishment was the speed of the spell cast. But little did he know that the spell was cast by Ezra the moment the scythe was blown away. He knew Rolo won't be caught by such a surprise attack, especially when he is someone with space magic. Kill him, now! Cried Ezra. It took mere milliseconds for XYR to get a grip, a stomp on the ground, and with perfect martial strength he made a 180 degrees turn and shoved the dagger. The fourth circle spell, Magma Coating, was around the dagger. Kung. Huh. XYR was confused, the dagger refused to penetrate, it seemed as if he was forcing itself away from Rolo's body. Do you think you are the only one with coating spells? A coating spell? XYR repeated in worry. Sixth circle spell, Void Sheet. Raja Solomon, the giant 8th grade martial spirit, stroked his wavy sword and the chains of chaos shattered. Tremendous pressure was applied, and XYR was forced onto the ground. He tried to stand up, but his efforts were futile. Seeing how helpless he was in the current situation, he cried in anger. Sixth circle spells, Lava Mamba, Frost Cobra. A burst of spiritual energy happened, and 2 types of mana outpoured in vast quantity. 2 giant snakes came into being, a mamba with volcanic skin and a bluish cobra of ice. Hyas Sciasis. The duo of snakes hissed as they snaked like arrows. It was an attack that even Rolo could not take lightly. During the cast, he jumped behind, but it didn't take time for the dual 6th circle spells to reach him. Rolo used finite teleport, but to his eureka, the Lava Mamba and Frost Cobra turned their direction and headed towards him. It seemed like the target of the duo of snakes was carved into their heads. "Damn it!" cried Rolo as he clapped his hands and clenched them. 7th circle spell, Cosmic Blast. The grayish-colored mana billowed, and a large-scaled thermonuclear bomb spell was detonated. KBBBBOM. With a humongous blast, the aftermath wave of mana blew away martial masters. Even Jon Stark had to stick his greatsword on the ground to stand firm. "What the hell is this power?" uttered Liam and Tigerian. "Both of these brothers are monsters," stated Acker Boldheart. Meanwhile, Fairy Hololef gasped. "That man from Cult of Jinns, is he dead?" The mana calmed and the smoky dust settled. Soon everybody could see the outcome of the bomb. A large gulf could be seen at the place of the blast. At the very edge of the gulf was an almost destroyed igloo. When they looked carefully, a figure was inside that igloo. It was XYR. His clothes were tattered, his body became a mess, and blood dipped from his shattered body. The inside of the igloo was nothing painted with burnt blood. "I am going to help him," Baron said as he jolted towards him. The spearman reached half-dead man. Baron's eyes widened when he saw that XYR was still conscious and trying to stand up by tightly clenching the scythe. He paid no heed and poured the light mana onto him. "I'm coming too," said Fairy as she moved like a mystery. CLLANNG. The whip was knocked back by a white greatsword. Rima growled like a beast. The one who blocked her was Jon Stark. He didn't say anything and stared at the lady in blue attire in sheer hatred. At the same time, a certain figure was also revealed on the other side of the gulf. "Ha, ha, cough." Rolo was gasping like a race dog. "I used too much of my power," he said to himself. Blood came out of his eyes. "Rolo, surrender. Your body is weak, the current situation is too dangerous," Raja Solomon advised. "No way, I can't cough retreat. My pride is on the line," replied the youth in loincloth. "Don't be a fool, don't make the same mistake that I made. You can achieve a lot of things if you are alive," said Solomon as he remembered his death that turned his brother into a hero. Rolo remained silent. He was battling inside his mind on what to do. A voice resounded. "Is that all you can show, almighty representation of Las Filipinas?" A wild smile could be seen on Ezra Zephyr's face as he said. The vicious mocking of Ezra was enough to trigger the exhausted Rolo Solomon, called Rolo. "Yes, Rolo, I am listening," the martial spirit answered. "I will surrender and live, you were right. That is a sane decision. But..." The vortexes inside the eyes of Rolo spun, and more blood came out. "After I kill that Greek bastard." "No, Rolo. He is jeering on purpose." An object was taken out, a strange token, made of strange leather and wood with imprint carved on it. He pressed it hard, it broke and gave off a vibrating noise. "I am Rolo host of Raja Solomon. The Greeks have already sent their people to the lower realm before us. I am heavily wounded, and I may not be able to return. All hail Las Filipinas. PHHISSSHHH. The round token turned into the dust of light and vanished. "What was that?" asked Ezra. Rolo laughed. "I informed the upper realm about you, haha. The news of the Greeks secretly conquering the lower realm will scatter in the upper realm like a fire in forest. You sent a message in that injured state? This simple task could be done by your two subordinates as well, how classless. Laughed Ezra Zephyr. No, this message could only be sent by me and my brother, others do not possess tokens. You lots of Greek do not even know what these tokens are made of. Oh. Hearing that, Ezra let out a huge sigh. Thank you for informing me. The Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom stepped towards Rolo as he uttered. Come out, Fenrir. What? Did he say Fenrir? Who is that, Solomon? Asked Rolo from his martial spirit. Rolo. Yes, what happened? The voice of Raja Solomon wavered as he said. Retreat. Retreat. Said Raja Solomon in a wavering voice. Solomon, what happened? Rolo asked in confusion. Raja Solomon answered right after. He is not someone from Greek, he is the monstrous wolf of Norse, Fenrir, the one who devoured Odin. These words were enough for his pulse to speed up. We sent a false report. Rolo's heart shook. Crackle, crackle. Black bolts of chaos force thundered furiously, and its noise resounded. A blacking figure came out of Ezra Zephyr, a wolf with the color of black like midnight, mountain-sized beast, bared its fangs. Raja Solomon, a being I know has finally come down. It is pleasant to see you in the lower realm. The monstrous wolf of Norse spoke. Raja Solomon flinched. It's really, you, how is this possible? Everything is within the circle of possibility, if I, Fenrir, draw the circle. The giant martial spirit with the wavy sword in hand looked terrifying. For others, they could not hear a thing, just a change of expression on martial spirits' faces. It was clear that the martial spirit of Rolo was intimidated by the martial spirit of Ezra Zephyr. We have made a terrible mistake, Rolo. Said Solomon. Order those two to inform Carlo about Fenrir. Hearing the suggestion, Rolo quickly turned his head towards his duo partner, but both of them were tightly locked in battle. Rima was locked by Jon Stark while Carl was battling with Aker and other martial masters from the Bloodfang Kingdom. Just when his attention dwindled from Ezra, two objects came towards him at a frightening pace. Rolo jerked, he raised his sword and swung it. Clanning. His arm was knocked away by the impact. What? Banggg. Another one hit Rolo in the chest, knocking him a few meters away. Arg! Cried Rolo as he gazed at the objects. Those heavy objects were bracers. Ezra released the bracers placed on his legs this time. I'll believe that you have prepared yourself for every possible outcome when you came here. Uttered Ezra. He moved, much faster than last time. Like the embodiment of lightning, he appeared at the side of Rolo and disappeared and again came from another direction. Rolo was bewildered. What kind of monster he is? The speed surpassed those of the first-level core formation stage. Be alert, Rolo, he is the strongest foe you have ever faced. Told Raja Solomon. Rolo clenched his grip on the cutlass. Abyssal slash, he yelled. A slash of gray color went towards Ezra Zephyr. Portal cutter, a single wave from Ezra and the short sword Efsa cut the abyssal slash easily. Only the world stupefied could describe Rolo's current facial expressions. What did you do? Asked Rolo as the fighting spirit was slowly crumbling inside his body. It's my armaments ability. Answered Ezra. Armaments ability. It's only possible for a legendary tier armament. Well, you just answered your question. Ezra smiled as he moved Efsa as a pendulum. You have a legendary tier item. Rolo's shock grew, he gazed at the short sword, but to his shock, he couldn't determine the tier of Efsa. After remaining quiet for quite a while, Rolo spoke again. If you had such strength, then why didn't you fight me earlier? When Rolo said that, he felt a sudden assault of dizziness, his legs wobbled as he bent his knees. Cough cough, what in the name of Bathala is happening? asked Rolo. What is this? Your body is filled with a strange unseen poison. It just appeared out of nowhere, shouted Raja Solomon in worry. I think the poison finally takes its effects. When did you poison me? Asked Rolo. He has no clue when he was poisoned. Ezra raised the hook called Dripa, a purple-colored thorny hook, as he said. An ability of my other armament. TW2 Legendary Tier Armaments. Rolo was astonished. Ezra stepped towards Rolo at the same time Fenrir and Raja Solomon's distance was getting close as well. The former was smirking, while the latter was frowning. You asked why I didn't fight you earlier? Said Ezra as he stood a few meters away from the exhausted and poisoned man in a loincloth. Rolo looked at him, his head became heavy, but he managed it somehow. Rolo's eyes widened. What do you mean? He asked in a low voice. When I get to know that 87 of my kingdom's martial masters have gotten selected, I understood how much of an advantage I received. But still, I needed to make sure all the apex geniuses on your side are busy. That's where the apex geniuses from my side came into play. I saved Baron because I was aware of his elven sense of favor. He gathered all other geniuses like Jon Stark, Leomord, and others. They came because of him. My alone self could never have united them. Then I stayed behind to monitor the war, self-proclaimed myself as the leader. With the majority of martial masters belonging to my kingdom, they didn't oppose it. And I didn't give them any respect from the start. Even the message was sent to them through their not Zulfi, Shifa, or Argus, who are commanders. With their pride hurt, and subconsciously accepting me as the leader. Their psychological behavior forced them to prove themselves, so each went and picked a strong foe, solving my problem of keeping apex geniuses of your side at bay. Blood dripped from Rolo's eyes, his mind became numb. Ezra continued. At that point, an irregular appeared. The next Jinn of the cult. I calculated him as my enemy, but it seemed his fight with Carlo made him curious about you. I gave him a little push he needed, and your duel started. I knew you will emerge victorious, but not unscathed. Your body is weak, you have mythical martial spirit, but your martial body is very weak. As you used more of your spiritual energy, you exhausted yourself and let the poison spread, leading to your current condition. Ezra smirked as he ended his part. Rolo trembled in rage for the first time. You bastard! He raised his body with a jerk and bolted towards the werewolf prince. He thrust the grayish cutlass towards Ezra, the latter tilted his body slightly and the thrust was dodged. Rolo couldn't believe the current scenario, his body wasn't listening to him. The poison was more fatal than he assumed, it was his sheer nerve that he was still standing. But that was the end of it. Ezra clenched his fingers into a fist, and black bolts danced on his knuckles as he landed a punch on Rolo's face. Bannng. A punch on the nose sent the youth in loincloth away, his body bounced a few times on the ground before stopping. Clop, klap, clop. For Rolo, everything else became void. He could hear the footsteps of Ezra coming closer, or he was just hallucinating. But for the first time in his life, the youth named Rolo witnessed the fear. He quivered, the cutlass was lost after the punch he received. Ezra pulled him from his hair. You are not dead, right? Kook. Cough. He coughed, his face started to change its color. Good, I still have yet to enjoy. Chuckled Ezra. Kill me, Rolo murmured. Say again? Asked Ezra as he placed his ear near Rolo. Kill me. Rolo whispered again. Ezra clicked his tongue in disappointment. Don't be a boring-ass opponent, I want a spry Rolo from before. I will kill you for sure, but only after I teach you the value of death. Blood and tears came out of Rolo's eyes. You are atrocious. Indeed I am the atrocious werewolf prince, you shouldn't have come here. Ezra uttered right after. Second circle, spell, chain of chaos. 2 portals appeared, one on each side of Rolo. The black lightning flickered as chains made of black lightning emerged and caught the arms of Rolo. The chains pulled the arms, and Rolo was forcefully made to stand. His body was hanging on chains, only his feet lifelessly touched the ground. It was at that time Rima got the chance to gaze at another side of the battle. The current look of Rolo made her heart skip a beat. Rolo, she murmured. All of a sudden, a huge wave of spiritual energy came out of her as she yelled. Come out, Zaruma. BBZZZZZZ. A bird made of bluish liquid emerged from within her. It had 2 heads. The feathers were made of acidic liquid. Fish, fish. The stone-made ground burnt as the droplets hit the ground. 7 orbs rotated on the back of her, revealing that the dual-headed bird was a 7th-grade martial spirit. How dare you do that to Rolo? She cried out her lungs. Ezra looked at her from afar. He gave his usual wicked grin. As he formed his fist again, dragon pelt purplish scales appeared on his fist. Chaos, the scaled punch was imbued with black lightning. Thughh. He stomped his foot on the ground, using the momentum of his waist to swing, as he exerted the entire strength of his body and poured it into a right hook. Bannng. With a giant blasting sound, the jaw of Rolo shattered, and teeth came out as his cheek was torn. You son of a bitch. Rima lost all the reasoning to remain calm as she rushed towards Ezra. She ran like a mad woman, directly towards Ezra Zephyr. But unbeknownst to her, there was someone capable to stop her rampage. White sharp chi abruptly arose from within a certain person, and a giant decorated sword could be seen. A naked greatsword, white and majestic, decorated with various beautiful carvings as the intense sharp chi revolved around it. 7 orbs started to revolve behind the back of Jon Stark. He revealed his martial spirit. He swung his sword and the blue-haired girl called Rima was hit by a wave of chi. Boom. She cried as she was blown away. You bastard, rascal, mongrel. Don't stay in my way. Rolo is in danger. She cried as her eyes were filled with rage, fear, and tears. You are losing your mind when someone you hold dear is in danger. Then what happened to your benignity when you were slaughtering, ganging up and attacking other people? Asked Jon Stark. Shut up. We have a mission, we came from above. Do you even know what the upper realm is? Our martial spirits' grades were restricted since birth for this very day. We have all the rights, we are superior to you filial beings. Her facial expressions were poetic descriptions of madness. She lost all reasoning. TSK, hypocrites like you are never ashamed of their wrongdoings. They made idiotic and sadistic stories to confuse the a priority. He raised his sword and pointed it towards Rima. I am not sorry in the slightest for what is happening with Rolo but I am sorry that I have to kill a filth like you with my very sword. Disgust was visible on the face of the fair sword of humanity. On the other part, the punch that Ezra landed on Rolo was way more terrifying than one can grasp. His cheek was cut, his jaw cracked a bit, and his teeth were knocked out. The cunning Rolo's face was nothing but blood-dripping ball at that point. After the attack, the Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom didn't stop. He kept the momentum of his punch. The same foot that stomped earlier was used to spin, but this time in opposite direction. Scales were still there, and black bolts of lightning thundered as another punch landed. Boom. A cracking sound was heard by everyone as if he hit an invisible shield. Soon after, some lines similar to the web of a spider appeared on the loincloth that Rolo was wearing. Ezra squinted his eyes. A special tier armament. He murmured. Bang. Another hook was on the left side of the body, and another giant crack appeared on the loincloth while Rolo spat blood. The loincloth had a strange invisible shield that protected Rolo But Ezra was curious why nothing happened when he punched his face. Bang bong bong. A continuation of punches. On the body without an ounce of kindness. Phhissh. The shield completely shattered. Ezra grinned as he was getting excited about the next attack. Crackle, crackle. The hook came with evil intentions. Even the air tore itself to not hinder its pace. Soon the thundering punch of a scaled fist hit the armorless body of Rolo Boom. It seemed as if the punch was dug into his ribs. Cruunch. A nasty crunching sound as the ribs of his one side was destroyed. That blow was enough to send him miles away, but the chains of chaos made that impossible. Stop. He has already suffered numerous mistreatments, he is a victim of injustice, we came here to seek the greatest blessing so that we can go back and change something. Carl cried from distance. Ezra's punch stopped in midair, and he looked at Carl with widened eyes. What did you say? I am right, I know you are also a victim of injustice. He is already half dead, show him mercy, and we will go back, please. Pleaded Carl, he knew all the other chances are as good as void at this time. The eyes of Ezra lowered, and the tightly clenched punch released its grip. Slowly and gradually, the hand started to come down. Carl saw the kindness of Ezra, whatever he said was true. Indeed, Rolo was a victim of abuse and injustice. He had a weak body and the martial spirit of a hero who died without even accomplishing anything. To be very accurate, all the hosts of Raja Solomon were weaker than his brother Raja Indrapatra's hosts, but Rolo's body was exceptionally weak, and on the other hand, Carlo's body was astonishingly strong. Even their very own parents loved Carlo and neglected Rolo, even though Rolo was the elder one. That gave birth to a wildfire in Rolo's heart, a fire to achieve something. He trained all his life until he could no longer move. He believed his life will change if he'll join the raid of the lower realm. That's how he secretly came through the portal imprint that was drawn for Carlo or. However, a single man by the name of Ezra Zephyr devastated him and his plans. Carl gazed in anticipation, seeing the halting hand of Ezra Zephyr. He closed his eyes as he said, "Thank you, we will leave the lower realm." Bannng. A strange yet familiar banging sound was heard by him again, and his eyes opened right away. His eyes became red like blood when he saw that Ezra punched Rolo or again. "You bastard! Didn't you listen to what I said?" yelled Carl. To him Rolo and Rima were like family. Rolo or was completely destroyed, his ribs were broken, his face shattered and swollen, he was bleeding inside out. "Kire me," Rolo mumbled. Ezra gave him an ear to hear the better of it. "Kill me." He heard what the half-dead invader was whispering. "All right. I am a gentleman. I will bestow upon you the gift of death," said Ezra Zephyr as he stepped a few steps away from the battered man in a torn loincloth. Ezra Zephyr extended his hand as if he was about to perform something. A circle was drawn beneath the feet of Rolo or, a white-colored formula. Ezra Zephyr opened his mouth. Soul absorption spell. Only the martial masters of Bloodfang Kingdom were aware of what is about to happen to the half-conscious Rolo or. As the circle started to shine, Rolo started screaming. Wawareya. His entire body shuddered tremendously, like a fish out of water. He yelled and yelled. Blood oozed out from his eyes, ears, and nose. Aagurgurgur. Blood went to his mouth, and his crying throat started to gargle with his own blood. "Rolo!" Carl gasped. "Rolo! Rolo! You bastards, let me go!" Rolo, the madwoman in blue, bellowed in anger. Not long after, the struggle of Rolo or ceased, as a ball of nature color emitted out from his chest. It was the soul of Rolo or, a being from the upper realm. Rima fell on her legs, her eyes wide open. She was lost. It was the best time for Jon Stark to kill her, but he didn't. That was something that contradicts his personality. Carl on the other hand gritted his teeth. He tried to help multiple times, but he was stuck against Acker and Baron. They didn't attack him directly, they were just fighting a defensive battle. Their main focus was to not let this man go and help Rolo or. Ezra showed his palm and the nature-colored ball of light fell on it. His eyes were full of greed, curiosity, and excitement as he gazed at the ball. He paid no heed and wolfed it down. The type of power was released inside his body, one that he had never in life tasted. The soul was merged within the core and got absorbed. The amount of force that single soul of Rolo or gave him was more than what he absorbed from the spirity beast squad of Ixtal Malark. Ezra was bursting with an immeasurable amount of force. He was ready at the peak. Just a small push was needed for him to ascend to the higher realm of the core formation stage. Boy, don't break through. Endure it. Gather the amount, don't let the barrier break. Fenrir suggested. What? I can't hold. No. You must. You bastard, you'll kill me. The inflation of power started to hurt the barrier of Ezra Zephyr, the barrier of the chi brightening stage, which will be broken and transform slowly into a core. One just had to let loose his body to let the spiritual energy leak through the barrier. The pressure emitted by Ezra was no less than that of the core formation stage. He held on, and he gritted his teeth in pain. The agony inside his body was crueler than any he's endured before. At last, he felt something. The barrier started to expand. It extended and extended, astonishing Ezra himself. His suffering ended, and there were new powers he wanted to test, but before that, there was still an important matter to attend to first. Ezra stumbled towards the likely mutilated body Rolo, or, as he said, Fenrir, devour. After absorbing the soul of Rolo, or, the Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom reached new heights within the realm of the chi brightening stage. He wondered how did that happen, an extension of the realm that was already at its very peak. These thoughts could be discussed later, but there was something that needed immediate attention. Ezra went close to the dead body of Rolo, or, and uttered, Fenrir, devour. Stop. Raja Solomon came out of the body of the dead Rolo, or, Fenrir, O famed wolf of Norse. Please spare me, I was unaware of your existence. Otherwise, I would have collaborated with you, said Raja Solomon. Monstrous wolf of Norse shook his head. Prince Solomon, your spirit is essential for me to ascend. Fenrir, my spirit will not give you anything, but my knowledge can. It's been thousands of years since you vanished from the upper realm, I can tell you everything till now. I am a mythic being like you. Fenrir looked at Ezra Zephyr. This entire conversation could only be heard by the trio. Seeing that, Raja Solomon was relieved a bit. He assumed that the young man from the lower realm would anticipatorily ask for the information. But to his misfortune, Ezra sighed and said, Not interested. Fenrir opened his mouth. I can tell you Indrapatra's weakness. Solomon yelled. Fenrir stopped when he heard that name and said, Speak. This time he didn't even ask Ezra. Solomon was on the verge of extinction. Without his host, he was powerless. A mythical martial spirit can revive itself multiple times, the numbers grew with the power. But there was a condition for revival. The condition was that a fragment of martial spirit should be in complete shape. But when Fenrir will devour, not even the smallest fragment will be left for revival, and Raja Solomon was very well aware of it. The terror of Fenrir's hosts in the upper realm always made many hosts of legendary heroes and gods shit their pants. The same thing was repeating, but Rolo already died, so they couldn't check if he would shit his pants or not. After being asked by Fenrir, Raja Solomon was left with no more options. His stamina, he said. Stamina? Pondered Werewolf Prince. This is not the weakness of Raja Indrapatra, but his host Carlo, right? Said Fenrir of Norse. Solomon nodded his head as he continued. Carlo was born with a treasured body, he could hold a lot more spiritual energy inside his body than others. His bones and overall body structure are at peak, he is a cultivator unlike his brother Rolo, who was a sorcerer. When he said that, he looked at the dead body of Rolo with gloomy eyes. But Carlo got arrogant, and the word called hardwork vanished from his dictionary. He lacked training, and when asked, he just showed his natural powers, and the results were satisfying, so no one pushed him. But I and Rolo knew that this will be the cause of his demise. All you have to do is to drag the battle, the longer the battle, the more certainty for the win. Solomon stopped talking and looked at Fenrir for a positive response. The wolf uttered only 2 words. Thank you. With the ending of the 2 words, he opened his mouth, white fangs could be clearly seen, and the inside of his mouth was pitch black, it sucked the heroic figure inside. Fenrir, you hoaxer, Bathala will know about this, my brother. He will avenge me. His voice vanished with his entire self. AWWO. A loud howl of victory by Fenrir, for the first time as Ezra's martial spirit Fenrir devoured a mythic figure. Even though he was restricted to 8th grade, he was still a mighty mythical being. What else did you expect from the firstborn of Loki, god of mischief? Uttered Fenrir. Soon, Fenrir began the process. Black lightning of chaos force flickered viciously, the thundering bolts flickered everywhere as they surged out from the body of Ezra Zephyr. The ground stones shattered slightly as the bolts hit them, with each touch a few cracks appeared on them. That was how tyrannic the bolts of chaos force were. Ezra felt a uniqueness in his bolts this time, the quality of chaos force tremendously increased, and he could even feel a marginally powerful space attribute in his force. Fenrir growled like a cornered wolf. At this point, Ezra started to feel the pain. He was about to evolve, or to be more precise, his martial spirit was about to evolve. AWWWOOO. With another loud howl, a gigantic blast occurred, and one could see that the black lightning became thicker. Only Ezra was understanding that the difference was like day and night. Huh! His Majesty's back! Someone cried all of a sudden. The eyes of the masses landed on the back of Ezra Zephyr, and their eyes widened. 7 orbs were rotating behind the Prince of Bloodfang. His Majesty's martial spirit evolved. Zulfi was shocked as he said to himself in his head. There were 3 faces printed on the martial masters. Number 1 was the face of shock. Jon Stark and all the other allies from foreign lands were shocked beyond the limit. Even Karl and Rima were puzzled about the current scenario. Secondly, the faces of happiness. All the martial masters from the Bloodfang Kingdom were happy, and their faces could tell that. Last but not least, the face of fear. Ixtal Malark and Salim equally were horrified. They reacted as if they had seen a dead, and indeed, the current Ezra was worse than any scary ghost they could see in nightmares. A certain man wielded a different expression, contrary to the majority. An expression of wrath. That certain individual was none other than Victor Brownmane. 7th grade martial spirit. Is this possible? He murmured and continued. We took the 6th grade martial spirit and gave him a 7th grade. He stopped at that moment, his eyes widened, and his anger turned into madness as he smiled. No, the prophecy was not about Brother Benedict, it was about me. I understand now, his 7th grade martial spirit is meant to be taken by me. Red Werewolf families, everything belongs to our Brownmane family. His pondering was still on run when he sensed something. He quickly swung his spear. CLLAANNG. A stone, it was, thrown by Leomord Tigerian. Don't sleep amidst the fight, he said. Victor sneered. Ezra Zephyr clenched his hand. The overflowing tyrannic power was beyond his wildest dreams. He was sure that he could beat any of the first-level core formation stage cultivators or an early 3rd circle sorcerer. There wasn't any book that could say it is possible to extend the size of barrier. Murmured Ezra. The mysteries of martial prowess are vast, not even the upper realm could solve them, not during the time I was there. Ezra smiled, he smiled with his eyes closed, a smirk of satisfaction. Who would have believed that the man who had no martial spirit at all could be the host of a 7th grade martial spirit? Not to mention, Fenrir of all. He calmed his heart down as a thought came to his mind. He remembered the words of a mysterious voice that came when the tower was erected. He gazed at the other side of the battle. Various dead bodies could be found on the floor. Some of his martial masters, while all the others belonged to the enemy's side. He started counting, and as he ended, he shot forward like a released arrow. Bloodfang Kingdom's martial masters were fighting against other geniuses of the continent. Even though with a special tier armament in hand, they were in a tie against group attacks of geniuses. One martial master from Ezra's side was desperately fighting against 3 of the other geniuses. He had a special tier glaive, but the other side had more numbers and were also worthy geniuses of their lands. All of a sudden, they saw a flash of black lightning. SWIIISSSHHH. 3 heads flew into the sky, their eyes wide opened and face filled with curiosity of why the ground was rotating until they saw their own bodies laying in the ground dipped in blood. That was the final sight of those 3, and then their consciousness faded. Ezra moved at a horrifying pace. Every time he passed some figures, the majority of them fell with their heads in the air, spraying the ground with blood. Seeing the one-sided massacre, the geniuses gazed at the 5 leading figures: Victor, Salim, Ixtal, Rima, and Karl. But all of them were stuck in their own battle. At this point, one female yelled, "I surrender." The short sword of Ezra stopped a few centimeters away from his neck. That woman was not aware of just how lucky she was. One by one, all the other sides surrendered except the 5 leading figures. Martial masters of Bloodfang sheathed their weapons and looked at their prince. "Who told you to sheath your weapons?" "Fear." Sheer fear arose inside their hearts. They quickly unsheathed their weapons and lowered their hand in shame. At that time, the mysterious sound came again. "Those who have surrendered must be spared. Causing any harm will result in disqualification." The voice ended. Ezra spread a glance at. Apart from Zulfi Dimitri, Shifa Pista, and their Gale arms, all the rest are ordered to kill the surrendered martial masters. "What?" that female yelled. "Ezra, you will be disqualified," said Fairy. "I'm not, I won't be the one to kill." Fairy was shocked. "But, they are your subordinates, at least ask them if they want to." Thud thud thud. As she was talking, a head bounced and rolled to her side. She looked at the sliced head. It was the female who surrendered. With bewildered eyes, Fairy looked and found that she was killed by a woman from the Bloodfang kingdom. "What have you done?" asked Fairy. The woman calmly answered. "His Majesty's orders are absolute. You could have gotten some blessings." She was ferocious for some reason. That female replied with a smile. "Bloodfang Kingdom has already gotten the blessing they need." She looked at Ezra Zephyr and bowed. Fairy's jaw dropped. Many were astounded by such loyalty. Just with that, the massacre continued. Even after surrendering, they were killed. "Ezra, behave like a prince." A vigorous cry imbued with spiritual energy. The Prince of Werewolves twitched his eyebrows and looked at the source of the cry. He gazed at the fair sword of humanity and asked, "What? This is not humane behavior," he said. "But I am," he cried. "And I won't allow that." He changed the direction of his sword and pointed it towards Ezra Zephyr. "Fair sword, this is not the time for infighting," suggested the battle maniac Acker Boldheart. "I apologize, Battle Maniac, this is something my nature won't allow." Ezra looked at him. There was no sign of anger, just a simple smile. "I don't want Naren Continent to lose a genius. I have a lot of uses for you in future, so, just for you, I'll spare them." John Stark was confused. "Uses? What uses?" he pondered. But alas! John Stark squinted his eyes at the strange exclamation. "They are already dead," said Ezra with a smile. John Stark quickly turned his eyes to see, and found that all of them were killed. Half of them were already killed by Ezra when he jolted. The benefit of numbers vanished and Bloodfang martial masters could easily kill them with higher-tier weapons. The only ones who remained were Victor Benedict, Salim Ukwali, Ixtal Malark, Rima, Karl, and surprisingly Emily Jomez. "Violations have been seen," the mysterious voice said and continued. "All the martial masters from Bloodfang Kingdom have been disqualified with the exceptions of Ezra Zephyr, Zulfi Dimitri, Shifa Pista, and their Gale arms. The total contestants remaining are 16, one has to be eliminated." The voice disappeared. A problematic look appeared on Ezra's face. He looked at the people. "Oh." His face showed a sign of relief as his gaze fell upon the injured XYR. He neither surrendered nor died. Ezra went towards him slowly, but all of a sudden a white figure stood in front of him. "Enough," said John Stark. Ezra sighed and face-palmed himself. "Aren't you getting tired of this bullshit? You have multiple uses, I accept. But, do not cross your limits." Black lightning thundered. John Stark knew he would face tremendous consequences even if he manages to defeat Ezra. But the fair sword of humanity stood bold and unflinching. Before the terrifying fight could erupt, the mysterious voice came again. XYR from the cult of jinns surrendered. The surviving 15 and the strongest one will move towards the next floor. In the vast coliseum filled with a myriad of dead bodies. The sudden announcement shocked John Stark. He quickly pivoted his head and looked at the injured XYR, who was in the healing process. Fairy and Baron were pouring their strange mana into his body. "Happy now?" said Ezra Zephyr. John Stark was not sure what to say. He put the white sword behind his back and stood silently. 15 of you will be moved towards the upper floor shortly, the mysterious voice came. Ezra moved. He passed by the fair sword as he moved towards the dead bodies. The sights of rest followed Ezra Zephyr. Everyone was confused at a strange sight. The martial masters of Bloodfang Kingdom were gathering the dead bodies and made 2 mounds of dead. One was filled with dead bodies of those who followed the upper realm leader, Rolo, and the other had only dead bodies of martial masters who belonged to the Bloodfang Kingdom. There were 31 of them. The werewolf prince went towards them and murmured the same words that he spat earlier. Soul absorption spell. White-colored circle occurred as it covered the 2 mounds. As the light became denser, balls of light came out of every dead body, merged into one, and came gradually towards the awaiting Ezra Zephyr. It was at that time the same pillars of light came that teleported them from Spirit Bailiwick to Spirit Tower. But astonishingly, the light only covered the other 14, Ezra was not within the light. That exception somehow shocked Ezra as well. Soon after, all of them vanished, including those who were disqualified. What remained on the Colosseum were dead bodies, a gigantic soul ball, and the werewolf. Whom? John Stark and the rest were blinded by a strange light when their eyes regained the ability to see. They found themselves in the vast boundaryless place. In front were 8 square rings. Their eyes traveled through the rings and found a certain individual on the very first ring. A tall, muscular male in a loincloth, bulging muscles and ancient energy revolving around it. His pitch-black eyes were akin to a black hole. He looked a lot like Rolo, his features and dress as well. He looked at the newcomers with a side-eye for a second. His attitude and behavior showed that he was not surprised in the least, but as another second passed, his head jerked as he gazed at the newcomers one by one. With each passing figure, his facial expression turned grave. Until his eyes landed on Rima and Carl, their exhausted and gloomy face told him something that he never wanted to hear. SWWOOM. How many seconds does it take for an eyelid to blink? A second. Or maybe half of a second. But it took Carlo less than the time an eyelid takes to blink to reach in front of the duo of the upper realm. Huh. How did he? Baron was shocked beyond belief. That speed. The fair sort of humanity pondered in complete disbelief. Acker Boldheart was bewildered as well as he murmured. He was simply playing with me earlier. The reality opened the eyes of Battle Maniac as he lowered his head. Meanwhile, Victor and the rest were simply stunned. Where is Rolo? 3 words, he spat only 3 words, and both Rima and Carl started trembling. "Sia Carlo, Carl stammered as he fell to his knees. Mana started to overflow within the vast space, and it became difficult to breathe for everyone. Even the host of 7th grade martial spirits, John and Fairy, couldn't stop this pressure. "You, speak. Where is Rolo?" he said as his field of vision turned towards Rima. Rolo. Her reaction was a lot worse than Carl's. "Speak." Carlo yelled. The spiritual energy from his body was so powerful that everyone was blown away except Rima. That amazing control over the spiritual energy was unheard of within the lower realm. "He killed Rolo." "Aaggh," she screamed, like a bewitched madwoman. The suffocating pressure ended, and the vast place became extraordinarily calm. Another word came out of the mouth of the man in a loincloth. "Who?" "Huh?" I asked. "Who killed him?" That atrocious bastard massacred my Rolo. He tortured him, his jaw was shattered and his face was bloodied and torn. Sobs he was, crying and begging for death, but that coward man brutally took out his soul and martial spirit," said Rima as she wailed. His adrenaline spiked, and he looked at other newcomers, after a few moments. "Where is he? None of them is capable to defeat Rolo," said he. "He hasn't come yet," spoke Carl. Carlo was quiet, there were no threats or swears from his side, just empty black eyes looking at each figure with great focus, as if he wants to ponder about the most brutal method to torment their bodies and soul. At that very moment, the light pillar came. Swoom. The last and final of 16 arrived, the atrocious werewolf prince made his entrance. At the sight of Ezra, a strange wave of relief rose inside everyone's heart. Except for those who wanted him dead. "He is the one. Carlo, he killed Rolo," shouted Rima. The powerful man in loincloth took a look at Ezra Zephyr. He slowly went towards the Prince of Werewolves. "His Majesty." "Your Highness, be careful," yelled Dur and Zulfi at the same time, while Shifa Pista already jumped towards Carlo. Bzzzzzzzzz. A strange force hit Shifa Pista, and she was bounced back. "Scuffle before the start of battle will result in disqualification," warned the mysterious voice. Ezra looked at Shifa with a side eye, telling her to calm down. Carlo stood half a foot away from Ezra Zephyr. Their height was even, but the former was slightly buffed. "Where are you from?" asked Carlo. The werewolf prince knew what he was asking, and he responded. "Greek." "Martial spirit?" Another question from Carlo. "You will figure it out in time," replied Ezra. The exchange was rather simple than anyone thought. Each of the two powerhouses was talking calmly while holding the urge to kill the other. "Carlo, it's a wolf. A giant black wolf, that's his martial spirit," informed Rima with a sorrowful shout. Carlo went into deep thought, his expression slightly changed as if he was told something. "King of Arcadia, Lycan, is it?" uttered Carlo. Ezra's eyes widened, he gazed at the latter in amazement. Seeing the reaction, Carlo continued. "I received my answer." He turned and moved away. He was shocked because Carlo didn't take the name of Fenrir, however, his shock made Carlo believe that what he said hit the mark. "Fenrir, who is Lycan?" he asked the ancient wolf. The monstrous wolf of Norse chuckled. "Haha, a giant wolf from Greek mythology. He mistook me for Lycan because you took the name of Greek. Tell me about Lycan? What kind of wolf is he, same as you or different?" "There are few with the same powers as me, but none of them is a wolf. Lycan was once a human," said Fenrir. "A human? Who changed him to a wolf?" Ezra became curious. Fenrir sighed as he spoke. In Greek mythology, Lycan was a king of Arcadia who, in the most popular version of the myth, tested Zeus' omniscience by serving him the roasted flesh of Lycan's own son Nyctimus, in order to see whether Zeus was truly all-knowing. In return for these gruesome deeds, Zeus transformed Lycan into a wolf and killed his offspring. At the same time, Nyctimus was restored to life. I never encountered or fought him, so I don't know the rest. He was disliked by Zeus, so he was never offered to join them when they attacked my hosts. Fenrir continued. Despite being notorious for his horrific deeds, Lycan was also remembered as a culture hero. He was believed to have founded the city Lycosura, to have started the tradition of the Lycian Games, which Pausanias, a Greek record writer and geographer blessed by Zeus, thinks were older than the Panathenaic Games. Lycan dedicated the first temple in the city to Hermes of Cyllene. Lycosura. Panathenaic Games? What are they? Fenrir sighed again. You will understand slowly, too much mythical information will numb your mind. And it's Panathenaic Games, not Panathenaic Games, said Fenrir. Soon, the mysterious voice came again. Choose your opponent, no winner shall be decided until one dies and lose the strength to fight. Select the early rings carefully, each floor has different rewards, and once selected, the ring cannot be changed. One more thing to remember, blessed martial masters. Surrendering is not an option, the battle will be started in 1 minute, prepare yourself. These words hit all like arrows, only 2 people were unflinched, one grinned while the other was calm like a frozen lake. The words indicated that after entering the ring, one of the 2 will die. They all looked at each other. The 16 selected individuals were in deep thought. No. Not all 16, but 14, to be very precise. Carlo was the first one to make a move. The muscular man in loincloth slowly went towards the first ring. His speed was much slower than the speed he picked when he dashed towards Rima. Carlo stood there in peace, he was calmly inspecting Ezra Zephyr. All the other people were looking at him as well. Because, except him, no other had the slightest hope of survival. Even Jon Stark's facial expression confirmed that he will face ruination if he stepped in that ring. While everyone was perturbed, Ezra Zephyr jumped on another ring. Huh. Fairy Hololeth was confounded. Everyone believed that Ezra will face Carlo, but that man occupied another ring. This was the exact moment when everyone's brain restarted its function. Swoosh, hum. One by one, everyone landed on large rings. Only 2 remained, Victor Brownmane and Baron. The best choice was without a doubt Ezra Zephyr. Damn it! Victor shouted inside. Baron was very close to the ring of Ezra. Baron rushed towards the Prince of Werewolves. BBROOFF. When the elf was about to land on the ring, a flaming spear was shot towards him. What? The elf spearman was shocked. Mysterious voice mentioned that fighting will cause disqualification. CLLAANNG. He took out his spear from the spatial pouch and knocked the spear that was thrown to take his life. Gah! He emitted a little growl from the impact. SWWIASSSH. At that exact moment, Victor Brownmane crossed Baron. He grinned as their eyes met. Thup. Then second prince of the Brownmane Empire landed on the ring on which the crown prince of the Bloodfang Kingdom was standing. Shit. Cussed Baron as his eyes turned towards the first ring, Carlo, who changed his gaze from Ezra to Carlo in quietness. There were no emotions on his face, anger, surprise, excitement, disgust and whatnot. None of the feelings could be seen in the current Carlo. He was like those emotionless psychopaths who were considered threats to livelihood. VROOM. Baron was automatically transferred into the ring. This is unfair, he attacked me before entering the ring, yelled Baron. After the voice of Baron echoed, everyone's attention was turned towards him. That elf. Sighed Acker Boldheart. Baron. Baron. What are you doing there? Fairy finally saw the opponent of his guard Baron. Your Highness, that Brownmane bastard attacked me. Fairy glanced at Victor Brownmane. The youth in the red cloak gave a satisfied look in return. To heed the claim of Baron, the mysterious voice came again. The attack was launched after the time period of 1 minute. The fight had begun at the time of Victor Brownmane's attack. Baron's eyebrows were squinted in disbelief, his pulse accelerated as he shouted again. Huh? But I was not in the damn ring. A complete silence, no. Response from the mysterious voice. The pairs were made. In the first ring stood Baron and Carlo, or. The second ring had Upper Realm Carl and Fair Sword of Humanity, Jon Stark. In the third ring, Ixtal Malark was against Shifa Pista. Fairy Hololeth faced Upper Realm Rima in the fourth ring. Zulfi Dimitri vs Salam Ukwali in the fifth ring. There were Gale Arms against Emily Jomez in the sixth ring. Surprisingly, Leomord Tigerian and Acker Boldheart mistakenly chose the seventh ring and had to fight. And finally, in the very last eighth ring, 2 old enemies finally met. Prince of Brownmane vs Prince of Bloodfang. In this fight, one of the princes shall perish. The tension rose in the rings. The battle was already begun as per the mysterious voice. The center of attention was first ring when everyone was pitying Baron. Carlo raised his hand, and Baron flinched and released his martial spirit without delaying a bit. Ha! He cried. Fuhu! A large spear appeared above Baron, 6 orbs rotated behind his back. The spear was filled with warm light, it was a weapon-based martial spirit. "Reverent light spear, merge," mumbled Baron. The speak turned into complete light and dashed into the spear that Baron wielded. To his opposite, Carlo's eyes slightly twitched. The raised hand paused in midair, and in a bolting speed, a sword came to his hand. When the geniuses looked carefully at the sword, they found that the sword looked like a whip. From the hilt it had separate 3 long whip-like blades. "Yurumi sword," gasped John Stark. The sword was short in size, but it had a thick grayish chi around it. The younger brother of Rolo, was not a sorcerer, but a cultivator. "Damn it," uttered Baron as he dashed towards Carlo. He knew that his fate is sealed, and he will be the guest of the Grim Reaper in mere moments. But still, the young elf decided to show his princess his bold side of his. He jumped into the sky and uttered in a low voice, "Holy thrust!" A powerful attack spell was cast by Baron. The spear shone like a noon sun, the light descended on Carlo, like a falling meteor. The man in a loincloth was still the same as he was, that twitch earlier was the last change of facial expression he showed. SWOOSSHH. The paused hand in midair jerked slowly, everyone was able to see how he swung his hand. But, their body froze when they saw the outcome. Baron, who was dozens of meters away from him, felt a stinging sensation. The spear in his hand was cleanly cut and the unfortunate guard of the princess was divided into 3. Thud, thud, thud. His head, his torso, and his body below the waist fell in different spots on the ring. Blood flooded out of his body like a broken dam. It happened so slowly yet so fast, the other geniuses were bewildered, and they blinked in denial. Even the fellow upper realm geniuses of Carlo were in sheer terror. Unlike the rest who were shocked, they were terrified. "The victor of first ring is Carlo, the mysterious voice resounded. It was at that moment when the abrupt reality stabbed the others. "Carlo!" Fairy yelled. Her eyes widened as if she saw something that she never imagined in her wildest dreams. "How can we fight such a monster?" Leomord uttered. Fairsword tightened his grip on the hilt of his sword. He calculated numerous ways to save himself from that strike, but the outcome of each calculation was certain death. Victor Brownmane was stunned as well, his heart paced as he subconsciously praised his instincts to not choose that ring. Out of nowhere, a white circle was formed around the body of Baron, surprising everyone. It was a spell. Only a few know who cast that spell, and their heads changed direction towards the very last ring. "Soul absorption spell," murmured Ezra Zephyr. Carlo saw that as well. He jerked his hand again. Swoosh. The formula within the circle was disturbed and the spell was cancelled. The visage of Ezra slightly changed, that devilish smile was nowhere to be seen. Carlo's eyes met with Ezra's, it felt as if they were talking to each other. Ezra cast the spell again, soul absorption spell. His eyes were still stuck on Carlo. His opponent Victor Brownmane looked like a not serious matter to him as his attention was on first ring. Carlo moved his hand again, but this time the spell was not cancelled. His Yurumi sword vanished and he wrapped his hands around each other and looked at the spell. His impression revealed a sense of superiority, as if a gigantic dragon was looking at a fragile deer, naively jumping and planning something. He showed that he has the power to disturb Ezra's plans, but he is allowing him to do whatever he can to entertain him later. A ball of light emerged from the dead body of Baron and slowly moved towards the 8th ring. Victor Brownmane knew what is going to happen. He saw Ezra doing that in the Colosseum. "Like hell I'll let you," he shouted. The blazing spear rushed towards the werewolf prince. Crackle. A single bolt of black lightning emerged from within the body of Bloodfang's prince and hit the spear. Bang! With a loud collision, the spear was knocked back. Victor caught the spear in disbelief. It was the same attack that knocked Baron earlier. "You have advanced, you are in the core formation stage," uttered Victor Brownmane. The werewolf prince didn't answer him until the ball of light came and went into his body, only then he looked at Victor Brownmane. "Are you worried?" asked Ezra as the evil grin emerged on his face again. At that point, the mysterious voice came again. "Carlo will be sent to the next floor. Any more delay in the duel will result in disqualification and death. Swoosh. Carlo vanished from the first ring. At that time, the shock was minimized and everyone looked at their opponent. I know I can't land a scratch on Carlo but. Fair Sword held the sword with his both hands, his chi surged as he continued. I will make sure to avenge Baron with your death. Carl stepped forward with his fingers clenched in fists. You are beneath me. Mana came out of Carl at an insane rate. With Carlo gone, he was released from the huge pressure. Carlo. Carlo. Fairy was bemused. Ha ha ha, finally. Carlo avenged Rolo, how does that feel, huh? Seeing your loved one dying in front of you? Rima laughed like a mad woman, her tears were still wet on her cheeks. At that instant, the atmosphere around Fairy Hololeth changed drastically. All of you will die here. From the tone of Fairy Hololeth, it wasn't a talk but a declaration. Her green figure emitted an ominous energy. Rima's laughter ceased and soon she released her bluish acidic mana. We finally met, scum of Bloodfang, said Salam equally. I'm unwilling to chat with the dog of the upper realm, let my sword answer you. Zulfi Dimitri replied. Both swordsmen attacked menacingly, the clash left sparkles in the air. Ixtal Malark took out his earth-shattering axe, as he exchanged gazes with Shifa Pista. Oh. Where did I leave earlier? Shifa said as she gently tapped her temple with her index finger to remember. The Prince of Striped Beast's Empire and battle-maniac dwarf from Dwarven Empire Gotlanda were destined to fight. I respect you, Acker. The tales of your love for battles even reached the ears of my empire, said Leomord. The dwarf laughed. Haha, it is an honor to fight with you, Prince Leomord. Feel free to come at me with full power, no hard feelings, regardless of the outcome. Acker said as he swung his axe hammer to warm up. Haha, likewise, I'll try my best to not kill you. The Tiger Man replied as his gauntlet shone, sharp claws protruding from the gauntlet. Emily Jomez was in a sweat, she had to fight their Gale arms. The weakest duo amongst the top 16 faced each other. After Ezra jumped towards the 8th ring, Emily was the quickest to regain her wits. When Emily Jomez jumped towards the 6th ring, Thur released every bit of his power and followed her. The 6th ring was filled first. Thur's face was filled with anger, he looked at the ladder in malice. Emily, on the other hand, was battling with Thur and she knew how his speed gave her a bundle of troubles. If not for her backup she would have died back there. But now, she had to fight Thur again, and without any backup this time. Her fate was sealed the moment she was chosen in the top 16, the weakest opponent she could get was Thur, who overpowered her in an earlier encounter. Emily bit her lip. I shouldn't have come here, shit, she said to herself. The face of Lion Man Prince, Victor Brownmane turned red when his spear was knocked away by the spiritual energy of Ezra. He is on a different level, how many blessings did he get? A wave of doubts and questions attacked the mind of Victor Brownmane. Shall we start, mighty Prince of Brownmane? Inquired Ezra as he stepped towards the Lion Man. Inside a vast space, the 7 rings were bursting with spiritual energy. The pairs in each ring were almost alike in terms of power. Except for the unlucky 8th ring, where Victor Brownman was facing Ezra Zephyr. Victor surged out his chi like a volcano eruption, he held the spear in his hand and came at Ezra Zephyr from every side. Clanning, clang. Each attack of Victor was eventually blocked or parried by the wrists of the werewolf. His bracers which he wore back before ascending from the previous floor played a big role against the spear of Lion Man. Victor thrust his spear at the chest of Ezra Zephyr, the latter raised his left arm to block it. The blazing spear went through the arm, Ezra's eyebrow twitched a bit, it was a feint attack. Ezra quickly tilted his head towards the right. Whoosh! The flaming spear came from his unguarded left side and aimed at his neck. Ezra dodged the attack successfully, nice move, kid, he said with a smirk on his face. Victor vanished from sight, it's not over yet. His voice resounded. 4 images of the Brownmane Empire's prince emerged, and each was engulfed in flames. Countless attacks of the spear, from 4 directions, were launched at Ezra Zephyr. The Prince of Bloodfang raised his both arms to parry or block them, but to his misfortune, his actions were delayed a bit. Swoosh! A spear penetrated his right side and seemingly broke through the ribcage. As he guffawed, the voice came. "Oh. That's a wonderful lesson, Teacher Victor. Would you be kind enough to teach my arrogant ass more of such lessons?" Victor's eyes widened. The figure standing a few meters away from him who spoke was none other than Ezra Zephyr. He then rapidly pivoted his head to the figure his spear punctured. The figure smiled and gradually vanished. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. An afterimage. How could he make such an absolute afterimage? A drop of cold sweat rolled from his temple through his cheek to his chin and dropped onto the ring. His mind became numb. Swish. He slightly stabbed the calf of his leg. The sheer pain brought him back to reality, and the Lion Man Prince regained his senses. Ezra, who was noticing everything, was shocked to see that was a very genius of him. The shock prevented him from moving, but the pain overpowered the shock and helped him regain control of his body. A genius indeed. His image of Victor Brownmane grew by a small margin. As Victor Brownmane was about to move again, the Prince of Werewolves stood in front of him. What? How? The speed bewildered the Lion Man Prince. Bang! A jab it was. A gentle jab was enough to knock Victor numerous meters away. After the impact, Ezra looked at his fist. This feels different. He turned to Victor and questioned him as he gently massaged his fist. Are you wearing armor? Victor Brownmane stood up quickly. He solidified his stance and posed the spear towards Ezra. Shit, how is this possible? How can he be so fast? His pacing mind couldn't catch the question of Ezra. The Prince of Bloodfang moved again. Victor opened his eyes widened to an extent where it felt like they will pop out of their sockets anytime. This side, he thought as he struck his spear to his left. Swoosh! The spear cut through the air, and an inch away from the spear was the neck of Ezra Zephyr. Bang! A kick on the chest and the second Prince of Brownmane was forced to blow away. His body slithered against the ground before he could stop the moment. The fancy red cloak and a bit of Victor Brownmane's shirt were torn. A black shiny armor could be seen beneath the shirt of Victor Brownmane. That armor looks familiar. Pondered the Prince of Werewolves. Victor on the other side was able to stand. He felt as if his chest was hit by a boulder. No, this can't be happening. Does this failure have a might beyond mine? I am the future of Brownmane. I even surpassed my elder brother. The Lion Man Prince, who was in disbelief, couldn't adjust to the reality of him being so inferior to the mortal enemy of his family and empire. While mumbling all the irrelevant things in his mind, he remembered something his elder brother told him before he left for Spirit Bailiwick. The Crown Prince indifferently said as he kindly looked at his brother, Victor, this is my advice to you. Do not overlook that person. Which person? The proud Victor asked in anger. The Crown Prince of Werewolves. He said every word loudly to make his younger brother remember it well. That cripple? Brother, you have disappointed me. This was the response the second prince gave to his brother. Don't forget that he is ultimately the source of our blessings. From a certain point of view, he is the one who made us, but since we managed to take the initiative, it will be best to maintain vigilance at all times. Victor chuckled. Don't lump me together with yourself, brother. You are the one who stole his spirit, not me. I am a genius born with a perfect body and a 6th grade spirit. Well, you have to be careful though, that's if you don't want it to be taken back in the end. Victor shook his head. For instance, he felt as if he was in his palace drinking with his brother. He remembered the chatter with his brother. Did brother predict this? He pondered in astonishment. Why did I underestimate my opponent? Was I too arrogant? He said as he looked at Ezra Zephyr. The Prince of Bloodfang Kingdom felt the change of expression on Victor's face. I believed only John Stark and Fairy Hololeth could be my opponents, But the upper realm invaders and this cripple's monster, why all these variables arrived in my time? When Victor was amidst the chaos brimming up in his mind, his opponent came again. He flipped and landed a spinning kick on his abdomen. Boom. Same impact and same result, the Lion Man Prince was propelled into the air. He landed and glided against the ground a few times. He coughed as his shirt was completely torn, and black shiny armor could be seen on his torso. It was a damaged special tier armament. Huh. That's Black Peak armor, were you the one who bought it? Ezra was surprised to see that the armor he sold in the auction was found on his enemy's body. Victor stood again, his teeth were dipped in thin blood. It seemed that the strike did some interior damage. Broth cough arg brother. For some unknown reason, Victor was thinking of his brother despite him being on the edge of death.